All right. Well, welcome everybody to a special event here. That's a collaboration between the Warrior Next Door podcast and the Logbook Project. And you guys have heard of the Logbook Project. We did a special episode with them talking about their project and the at that time the upcoming launch of their podcast and everything. And we've been working together behind the scenes a little bit here and there ever since then, doing some pretty cool stuff. And what we've got for you guys today is one of those pretty cool things that came out of this collaborative effort that we've been involved with the Logbook Project guys. So I want to thank and welcome Nick DeVoe and Lars McKee, both of the Logbook Project guys. Welcome to the show here, and I think we've got some cool stuff to talk about today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Ryan. Oh my gosh, this thing's making a noise.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
There we go. See, this is what's great about live recording. So, Ryan, if this is a joint effort between the Warrior Next Door and the Logbook Project, do I still get to caw at the end of the episode, or do I got to withdraw my caw?
I think Nick and Lars are going to have to approve that. I mean, okay. I have no say in it. You do it anyway. So I mean,
I'll let it rock, and then we'll let these guys see if they want to edit it out or not.
Okay, that sounds good. Maybe Lars, being from Sweden, has some special slant on the caw. You know, do you guys know what we're talking about?
Hey, you guys come so far, without doing it. So keep doing it.
Okay.
All right. I like that. There you go.
People may mutiny on us if we don't have the caw at the end. So, okay. Well, first of all, I guess one of the subject that we're going to talk about today is the subject of Jack Hamlin and Mr. Morel Murphy, who is an Irish seaman aboard the HMS Capel. And it was sunk on December the 26th, 1944, just off of Cherbourg. Well, there's a long history here that we're going to kind of get into. It's not going to take us long to get through the history part, but we want to kind of give you behind the scenes on how this whole Zoom meeting happened in February of 2024 and how it all came together and how it really was a global effort. I think in a lot of ways you can look at it based upon where we all live in the world and everything. But, I guess I'll start off and just say, when Tony and I went to Europe with Bill Parker in June of 2024, we got to meet one of the guys.
Was it 2022, Ryan, or?
No, you're right. It was 2022. That's correct. It was 78 years after D-Day. Yep. One of the guys we got to meet in the group of veterans that was in Bill's entourage was this guy, Jack Hamlin. Jack Hamlin was, at first when I met him, I'm like, wow, look at this guy. He's almost 100 years old. He might have been 100 at that time. Heck, I don't know. And he was just as spry as ever. And even though he's in a wheelchair, by God, that didn't matter. He was going to get kisses on his cheek from every French girl he could find. And so Tony and I laughed about it, giggled about it, envied him slightly, all sorts of things. But what Jack's story was that he was in the Coast Guard, and he was on a Coast Guard cutter just off of Omaha Beach on D-Day, and he was a rescue swimmer. So he would jump into the water and swim. He'd tie a rope to his waist. Okay, this is caveman stuff here. He'd tie a rope to his waist. He was just in jeans and a T-shirt and tennis shoes. And he was jumping the water. It was pretty cold water. I think he said it was 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Swim over to the GI that was floating in the water, and if they were still alive, he would pull them back over to the boat. And then the guys in the boat would pull the wounded GI onto the boat, and they'd save lives. There was many different Coast Guard cutters there that day on D-Day. Jack was stationed just off of Omaha Beach. And so that's part of his story. And then from there, he went to Cherbourg, and in about 6 months later, he was stationed in the peninsula of Cherbourg in the port there. And on Christmas Eve, 1944, the SS Leopoldville was sunk by a German submarine. Just was it about a mile offshore? I think
it was 5 miles off the coast of Cherbourg. Okay,
and Jack's cutter was one of a handful of cutters that went out to the Leopoldville to rescue sailors. Just 2 nights later, as the HMS Affleck and the HMS Capel were in the area looking for that sub. They were themselves hit by the same submarine that sunk the Leopoldville. And as we understand it, we think Jack's cutter responded along with a bunch of other boats out there, and he was involved in the rescue effort that was underway out there. So that's a short story about how this whole thing came about. And but let's talk to the Logbook Project guys. And first of all, Nick, can you give me just a brief background on what your project's all about, and then tell me how I think we got you in touch with Jack Hamlin to be a signatory. Is that right?
That is right. And thank you, Ryan and Tony, for having us. And like you alluded to, this is not our first rodeo together, and it's been amazing with both of you guys. So thank you. The project is just, my father was a World War II pilot, and his logbook is just one of the things that was always in the house. And I've always been fascinated with the Second World War and all parts of it. One day I was at work and a story about a Japanese fighter pilot came across my news feed. A gentleman was 99 years old. His name was Kaname Harada. And I spontaneously had this thought, wouldn't it be a cool thing if I got Mr. Harada to autograph my dad's logbook? And one thing and another, I'll just fast forward. I got the book over to a friend in Japan. And unfortunately, Mr. Harada passed away before he could sign it. But I thought, well, gosh, the book is in Japan. It's going to be somebody. And shortly thereafter, I learned about another gentleman named Mr. Help me out, Lars.
Shigeaki Mori.
Shigeaki Mori, my goodness. Mr. Mori was a 9-year-old kid on his way to school on August the 6th when the atom bomb fell on Hiroshima. Fell into the river, survived that horrendous episode. And later on, this Japanese man was responsible for getting the names of a couple of American POWs listed on the memorial in Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a whole other podcast. That's a whole series. In fact, there's a documentary about it. It's called Paper Lanterns, and if you look for it, it's well worth watching. But long and short of it is, Mr. Morey signed my father's logbook. And at that moment, my mind was just blown. And that was in 2016. And we've been sending that book around the world to people ever since. And there are more than 250 signatures from veterans from both sides of the conflict. Also, people like Holocaust survivors. It's just a wide range of people who were, in one way or another, either directly in the war or impacted by it. And there's no real rhyme or reason other than to share some of these stories from both sides. So that's the project in a nutshell. In terms of the two gentlemen that we're speaking about today, yes, you're absolutely right. It was Bill. What's Bill's last name?
Parker. Mr. Parker. Yeah.
My gosh, sorry, it's just too many names to keep track of.
Yeah, sure.
But Mr. Parker was one of those who signed, and I think you guys reached out to us, and that was the connection we made. And then from there, you introduced us to Jack, and Jack is just a larger than life character, as you've already said. And then independently, I had connected with Mr. Murphy's family, and it was somewhere in the writing of the letter to, I think it was to the Murphy family, that the name Cherbourg, sort of in my mind, the two flags went up. That I was like, hang on a minute, Cherbourg is common here. Why is it common? And I went back and I looked at Jack's profile, and I suddenly, as you said, I suddenly made the link that these two men were on in the vicinity at the time of this all happening. And then things just started to unfold from there.
Yeah, what I remember most about Jack when Ryan and I first met him was they had 3 veterans that were in basically in the mayor's office in Valognes, France, as kind of the start of what would end up being a fairly significant tour throughout Normandy during the 77th anniversary of D-Day. And outside of his effusive personality and his big smile, I remember seeing Coast Guard, because they had kind of a name tag that would, tell him what branch of the service that he's in. I remember thinking to myself, why the hell do they have a Coast Guard guy over here in Valognes, France, being honored at Normandy? I mean, I didn't have a problem with veterans coming over and being honored, even if they didn't serve in a theater, but Coast Guard. And it wasn't until Ryan had a chance to visit Jack and interview him, and we had a chance to unpack his story a lot more, that we realized how huge, how large of a role the Coast Guard played, not just in the landings in the European theater, but in the Pacific theater as well.
Yeah.
So, and this is the first person that we've interviewed from the Coast Guard out of the hundreds of interviews Ryan and I have conducted. So it was really special for us when we had a chance to meet him and hear his story. Ryan was really excited about it, and I know that played no small role in having him connect you with Jack. And so, Ryan, I think we have three different sets of interview clips of source material. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we obviously, we have the Zoom call between, well, we'll get to that in a second here. We got the original audio and video that I did for are you talking about the one we did for our podcast,
yeah,
Tony?
For our podcast. You went and interviewed him. You got that, but there was another one too.
Yeah, so Jack had told me when I was there interviewing him that he had already been interviewed by the Veterans History Project. And, so I went out and sure enough, his video's out there on the Library of Congress website of a much younger Jack Hamlin talking. I think he was 87 at the time.
He was in his 80s.
Yeah. And he was, a little heavier and a little more, energetic and stuff, And so, I mean, what was great was being able to listen to both interviews and everything, and being able to, get, new information out of the older video, and everything. And so that really helped us. We played both of those videos during our Jack Hamlin series, which actually, I interviewed Jack, let's see, like I said, around September or August of 2022. And then we actually did the Jack Hamlin series in July 20th. It aired June 3rd of 2024. We aired that series. Then Jack passed away July 20th of this year. So, at the time, there's always a sense of urgency when you interview these guys. And that I think really played a role in us collectively, the Logbook Project and the Warrior Next Door, to really try to make this thing happen, where let's see if we can get Jack and Mr. Murphy on a Zoom call to see if there's any connection there, or at least let's have them discuss what they remember about this event. Even if Jack, the Holy Grail will be that Jack rescued Mr. Murphy. Well, that didn't turn out to be the case, but nonetheless, it was still a very powerful call. And there's some really interesting things that you'll hear that's being discussed between the two guys, even though there was a bunch of people eavesdropping in on the conversation. So
this is a third source material that we've been able to either collect or have access to, that we're going to share with both of our audiences today. So for the audiences who are listening, whether you're affiliated with the Logbook Project or the Warrior Next Door, obviously we have his episode on our podcast already to listen to, but this is fresh material. Ryan, could you talk about your journey up there and where this material came from?
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Logbook Project guys, didn't jump in. I was just sitting here in my home in Tulsa, getting fatter every day. And you reached out and you're like, hey, oh my gosh, there's a connection here between Jack and Mr. Murphy. I was like, what? Okay. And I'm like, okay, how does this impact me? That's cool. Okay. But, I was like, what do we need to do about this? And so what did you guys decided that, what take it from there and tell us what your idea was here.
Well, like I say, it just seemed that they were both certainly in the same, well, for sure, Jack was associated with the Leopoldville. That was clear. And then Mr. Murphy's ship went down, I think it was the next day. And it was the same submarine, which I had forgotten. You're right.
Yeah.
The exact same submarine that sank both ships. And so it seemed worth another look. So, and I never expected that. Yes, I did not think that we were going to find, Jack was the one that saved, Morel. I didn't think that, but I thought, at least there's certainly a chance. Here, these two guys are certainly within 24 hours of each other. of this action that, let's, like you say, let's just get them talking. It just seemed an amazing opportunity not to pursue. And I think you're right, because it took a little while to kind of get the wheels going on this, even from the two parties, the two men. I think Jack was pretty game, but getting Mr. Morel on board was a little more tugging, just because you know how life is and getting people and responses and whatever. So it took a little while.
Yeah.
But I think Lars, correct me if
No, I think that was exactly what happened. I mean, once thing gained traction on both sides, I think it went very fast. And I mean, I have to, say thank you for you, Ryan, because you did a lot of
Yeah.
legwork. I mean, how
Yeah.
long a drive
Well,
was it up to
I mean, it's a 3.5 hour drive, but I mean,
Yeah, so-
in the U.S., in the middle of the U.S., I mean, everything's 3.5 hours away, so it's no big deal. So,
But it was a big
that's a
deal,
full
Ryan,
day of
because
you.
without you, that was not going to happen. And also, we should
well,
mention Dr.
No,
Knowles.
Knowlton.
Knowlton.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Norman
Um,
Knowlton. Yeah,
yeah.
he was he accompanied Jack on the trip to Normandy. I understand he's done that several times with Jack, and he's his personal doctor also, up until Jack passed away. And whenever I put you guys in touch with Dr. Knowlton to do the signatory part of the logbook, there was your contact, and everything. And so then you guys decided, hey, well, why don't we try to get these guys on a Zoom call? But the problem was that Jack was not set up. They weren't set up to do,
Right.
to have all the junk that I've got here, which is, webcams and computers and, Bluetooth speakers and microphones and all that stuff. So I said, look, I would jump at the chance to go up there, hang out with Jack for part of the day, and be a part of this, I think, historical event.
Right.
I mean, it was a real honor and a privilege to have some small role in it and everything. And so it was really no effort of mine. It was a labor of love. I love doing stuff like this, so it was pretty cool.
So the Zoom call connects someone. I think Morel is from Ireland, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and served with the Royal Navy during World War II. So we just kind of went over a little bit about Jack's background. U.S. service member, Coast Guard, on a cutter, rescue diver, initially sent over there to help rescue wounded soldiers before and after, or during and after D-Day. Can you guys give us a little bit of background about Morel?
I'll let Lars take that one.
Yeah. Actually, I don't have that. I mean, he served on the HMS Capel. That's just about how much I have in that sense. So I'm sorry, no.
Well,
Now-
no, I mean, so he was in fact, it was ironic because their job was to try and hunt these submarines.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was my understanding he was on a captain class frigate or escort destroyer, which was built in the United States
Oh, wow.
and was
Correct.
put into
It's a
service in 1943.
Destroyer escort.
Yep, a DE, destroyer escort. And you're absolutely right. I think to me, the irony of all of this is the Capel got sunk by the U-486, a German submarine, and and they were a sub hunter. Their job was to hunt submarines. But I don't know if we want to get in this now or later, but one thing I learned about the 486 is it wasn't your typical sub. It was a Type 7C sub. It was one of seven in the entire fleet that was fitted with these special panels or tiles that would absorb sound and sonar, which made them far more difficult to detect. It was an experimental sub. These tiles are used on every modern submarine today.
Ooh.
But back then, it was the Germans that pioneered it. So they were up against a very formidable enemy. I don't know exactly what Morel did on the ship. It might be revealed as we go through this video. But what I'm excited about, and the reason I brought it up, is Ryan and I don't get a chance to touch or interview people who served in Europe, either for the Allied or the Axis powers. You guys are far more international than us in that regard. And I can't tell you how excited Ryan and I were that you guys were able to hook us up with someone from the Royal freaking Navy. right? The Navy of all navies, and be able to have them on our podcast. So thank you guys for doing that for us.
Absolute pleasure.
Entirely our pleasure.
Yeah, but wow, but Tony, that what you just shared there about because that was one of the questions even in my head. And one of the things I mentioned earlier about that, I'm not going to go into it, but the segue that we've been sucked into, guys, is it all revolves around these submarines. And
Yes.
so one of the questions I had in my head is how on earth, because this is late in the war, right? This is going into 1945. And I mean, Germany is reeling at this point, right? They are so for them to have a submarine, and I didn't know about the experimental type and one of seven and the tiles. I didn't know any of that. But just the fact that a submarine is still looking, basically, this is sort of this is in the
English
North
Channel is not very deep.
Yeah, and able to sink two ships within 24 hours. And did it get away, Tony? Did they eventually sink the sub?
They sank the sub in April of 1945. It was sunk by another sub, a British sub, and called the Tapir, Tapir. And it was just weeks away before the war ended. But I'm with you, Nick. I was blown away that here you are. You're an English channel. This is still very much it's a British lake. We're pushing inland. We're halfway across the continent of Europe. How in the hell did a German sub go in there and wreak this much havoc?
Yes. I mean, wow. So thank you for sharing that with me. Because there's too many things to keep tabs on. But one of the things I did want to do was to have a one-on-one with Mr. Murphy to ask him more about his duties, because it actually relates so much to what we do now. Anyway, but wow, thank you for sharing that. It was really fascinating.
Well, so sorry, did you have something else you want to say, Tony?
No, I was going to say, I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to listen to some Jack Hamlin.
Yeah. So what we did is we ended up, I drove up to Springfield, Missouri. We had a number of people on this Zoom call to kind of listen. And we even had some students and a class with some students that were watching and listening in on this Zoom call. This was on February the 10th of this year, 2024. And we'll go ahead and get started. And we'll start off here with everybody basically connecting. And you'll hear lots of hellos and, hey, can you hear me? And all that kind of stuff. But we'll just start it from there. At some point.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, my dear.
Hello, Mr. Hamlin. How are you?
I am doing just fine. You all look wonderful.
Oh, thank you. As do you. I think
Very
you're lying.
kind.
I don't
This is
think
a-
you're 102.
Yes, ma'am. This is a pleasure and an honor to talk with you. Thank you, dear.
And you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we are actually all here. I'm like a kid in a candy store. What am I saying? Good afternoon, good evening, maybe even good morning to Mr. Hamlin over there.
Thank you, sir.
Ryan, how are you? Ryan, I see your hand. I'm not sure there you go. Not sure who is over Mr. Hamlin's right side. Is that Dr. Knowlton?
I'm Dr. Knowlton back here. Yes, sir.
Hi, Dr. Knowlton. Hi.
Thank you.
Doc, you look amazing. I agree with Jennifer. I don't think you're 102, but we won't do any birth certificate checks.
You come
today.
and visit me anytime.
And of course, I have to recognize Mr. Murphy. Good afternoon, sir. Good evening, I guess. Thank you so very much for joining us. I'm just gonna say what is on everybody else's mind right now, that it is such a privilege and an honor for us to be here to witness the meeting of two, and I'm going to use the word ordinary men who did extraordinary things during the war. And this is absolutely a historic meeting, and we are just so happy and privileged to be here to see the two of you interact and to see what each of you will share and take away today. So I'm going to stop talking now, and perhaps Mr. Murphy, if you would, just tell us a little about yourself, and then I'm gonna invite Jack to do the same. And then maybe we can have a few other bits and pieces that we can talk about.
I was a submarine detective operator during the war, and Christmas night, 20th, the
1945.
Christmas night, 1944, I was operating the Aztec material. I was on duty the morning watch and had just come off the morning watch, and I was standing on the port quarter when the ship was torpedoed, and I was blown into the air, lifted off my feet, blown into the air, and the wind with the blast was terrible. My clothes were ripped off, and by the time I hit the water, I was really suffering from hypothermia. I remember being picked up by this boat sometime later, quite a while later, and I wasn't able to get into the boat. I was pulled in by one of the crew, and was taken to Cherbourg, to a hospital there. I spent the night in the hospital, and there was one of our officers, senior officers, came round the ward and just looked at me. He didn't ask me my name, number, or identity number, or anything else. And I was more or less told to get out of the ship, out of the hospital the next morning. So I made my way to the docks with my bare feet, and got on board one of our ships, and arrived back in Belfast, which was our usual port of call.
All right. Yeah, Tony, did you have something you wanted to add?
I do. Now we know what he did. He was a sonar operator. So ASDEC is the initialism for a British anti-submarine interdiction tool. It's a suite of sensors that include sonar, both active, like pinging it to see what returns, and passive, meaning you just listen, and hydrophones, which are literally just microphones you put in the water, as well as a variety of other things. So now we know that on what he was doing on the Capel that night is he was looking at the ASDEC screens. He was doing his job. The ASDEC is what made these ships submarine hunters. That was the thing that allowed them to detect the submarines and attack them. And remember what I was saying earlier about the special tiles that was on this submarine, one of 7 in the entire fleet. They may not have been able to detect this submarine.
Yeah.
Because these were significant revolutionary type technologies that the Germans are known for, that not only muffled the sound of the submarine itself, but absorbed the sonar and the sonar returns. So now we know he was up in the bridge. He was manning ASDIC. He was a sonar operator before he got torpedoed. And I just wanted to share that with our audience.
I got 2 things I want to say. First of all, on that note, I wonder how much he feels about him being a submarine detector, how much, if he feels partially responsible just for his own. I mean, I know if I were in that situation, my mind would go there because I'd think, well, that was my job.
Yeah.
You know, how could, maybe he wasn't on watch at that point whenever the submarine hit. I don't really know for sure at that point.
No,
But
he said he was manning the Aztec station when the submarine hit the port side, or in the submarine when the torpedo hit the port side.
so, you know, you'll hear later in the conversation, he talks about the dreams that he has, you know, and so, you know,
Right. I hadn't thought about that. I didn't
Yeah.
make that connection at all. But you know, if part of your job is to look for submarines and keep these convoys safe, and you get hit by a torpedo from a submarine, you know, how did these guys process that?
yeah, I can't help but think that they would internalize that, whether it was needed to be internalized or not, you know. The second thing I want to say is, we were having a conversation before we started recording today, about, you know, whether there were Coast Guard cutters in the area the night of the Capel sinking or not. And he says right there that a guy pulled him up out of the water onto the boat. A guy pulled him up out of the water onto a boat. We know from Jack's stories at Omaha Beach that whenever Jack would swim over to the guy, Jack would pull him back over, and they'd have a big dude on the boat reach down, grab him by the husk of their jacket, and pull him up onto the deck of the boat like a side of beef.
Yeah.
That's what he just described.
Yeah.
So I think a cutter may have picked him up. Are there any other boats that rode as low in the water as a Coast Guard cutter? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know.
Torpedo boat, maybe, but
Maybe a torpedo boat, but I don't know if they were the same boat, you know? The torpedo boats were, I think, longer. They were more like cigarette style boats, you know?
No, the torpedo boats would be smaller than the cutters. Actually, they were
Okay.
small wooden vessels, had a couple of torpedoes in the side, maybe a 50 cal on the front. But I mean, a destroyer wouldn't have done it. A destroyer escort wouldn't have done it. They would have had what they call freeboard, the height above the water. They would have had way too much for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's cool. Here we are talking about, oh yeah, I think this is what Morel was doing and all that. And this is why Ryan and I love doing this, because even though we record these interviews what happens a lot of times, Nick and Lars, is we get so engrossed in making sure we're not screwing up the recording and that all the equipment's working and that we're asking the right questions, that we don't have a chance to really listen or pay attention. So oftentimes, even the person who recorded the interview, when we come back and listen to our own damn interview of these guys, it's like listening to it for the first time. So right off the bat, we learned something. Yeah, you got something, Lars?
Yeah, I just wanted to connect back to what you were saying, Ryan. I mean, how these guys felt. I mean, how would you feel as a torpedo hunter and being torpedoed yourself? I mean, I think that's one of the common theme that we see with any veterans these days, and even with acting serving people today, is you're not that worried about yourself. You're more worried about the guy next to you.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely true, and I mean, we'll hear about that later on in the interview here. But yeah, I mean, these guys are more worried about the guy next to you than themselves. So
Yeah.
that's completely true.
The esprit de corps that the military is built on is, you know, fighting for the guys standing next to you, you know, protecting him, you know, and, you know, over and over again, you hear of officers who are only concerned about their men, you know, and it's the same all the way down to the foot soldier, the grunt that's doing the work in the foxholes and everything. And I'm sure it was no different for Mr. Murphy. You know, he had a role. He was doing his best at it. And look, he was up against something that I had never come up against before. You know, it was a technology that they didn't even know existed at that time, I'm sure. I mean, especially him. I mean, maybe the upper echelon knew something about this, but it wasn't down at this level yet. And so,
and one more thing, the other thing we learned is getting hit by a torpedo on a ship. I think a lot of people think, you know, all these ships are relatively big. You feel a little thud and all that. It blew him off the ship.
Yeah.
Took his clothes off.
Yes. I mean, this is not
what he says.
This is not a soft landing. When these torpedoes hit, even larger ships like aircraft carriers, there's plenty of eyewitness accounts, if people are anywhere near that torpedo, about having ankles broken and being thrown off their feet into a bulkhead. So yeah, it was a violent exit for him.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll continue here.
Unknown to me, Unknown to me, I was just married on the 1st of November 1944. And unknown to me, I didn't go to my home in Lisburn. I went to a cottage I had in Ballywalter to see my new wife.
Mm.
And we spent a fortnight together before I went to my mother in Lisburn. When I arrived in Lisburn, to my astonishment, my father had received a telegram, which was intended for my mother, and he held on to that telegram until a letter confirming there was no hope that I was still alive. So quite a surprise when I arrived at home.
Mhm.
I think that's the main part of my story.
Absolutely fascinating, Mr. Morel. Thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine that, you've left out so many details that that must be heart-rending. And I'm sure you carry so much with you about those events. Um, uh, Mr. Hamlin, if I could jump
Yes,
over
sir.
to you, because the whole reason that we are here today is that both of you, actually, if you don't mind, I'm gonna just give a little backdrop that I probably should have done on the introduction. So I'm gonna try and share my screen here for one quick second. But don't worry, we are coming to you. Okay. So and I apologize if this is not. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes.
the reason, of course, that we are here is because both of these amazing gentlemen very kindly last year agreed and both signed into my dad's logbook. And as I delved into the story of both of these men, I suddenly began to realize that there was an intersection. And Mr. Hamlin had served with the US Coast Guard. And I don't want to take too much of your story, Mr. Hamlin, and we're certainly going to get to you. But this was Mr. Murphy's ship, the HMS Capel, and the other ship that was torpedoed around this time was the Leopoldville. And here we have one of a picture of Jack's Coast Guard cutters, which he served aboard. I'm going to let Jack tell his story, but this is the slide that I really wanted to get to, which is the main intersection, where on either side of Christmas Eve, this U-boat 486 torpedoed these three ships, and 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 Jack was called out to the Leopoldville, and then I realized that the 486 was the same ship that 2 days later sank Capel and the Affleck. And so, Jack, I'm going to hand over to you to tell your story as only you can. I'll
Thank
stop
you.
sharing.
It's all right. Well, I'm 102 years old now. In 1939, I signed a contract with the New York Yankees to play baseball. In my first year with the Yankees, I caught a disease called rheumatic fever. And the rheumatic fever had left me with an enlarged heart. And when war broke out, I went to join the Naval Air Corps, and I could not join because they took an x-ray and found that my heart was enlarged and I couldn't fly. I next went to the Marine Corps, and I wasn't physically able to join the Marine Corps. I had a friend of mine I was playing baseball with, and he said, Jack, I'm going to join the Coast Guard. So I joined the Coast Guard with him. I spent 4 years in the Coast Guard, and I really thought for Coast Guard they'll never see combat. Well, to my surprise, I ended up on Omaha Beach, not a Florida beach. So when I enrolled in the Coast Guard, I went to New Orleans for training. Then they sent me to New York, to Staten Island, and we patrolled out of New York just looking for submarines up and down the coast. Well, one day we got a call that you're going to go down to Staten Island with your 83-foot Coast Guard cutter, and we're going to put you aboard there. We don't know where we were going to go, but we ended up in Poole, England, to be part of the invasion of Normandy. There were 60 Coast Guard cutters, 83 foot long, with a crew of 13 men on each one of us. And on each one, they had what they designated as 2 swimmers. I was a swimmer on Coast Guard cutter number 23. Jack Turk was my other swimmer. He was a gunner's mate with us. Well, when we were sent over, the 60 Coast Guard cutters went to Poole, England. Had no idea we were going to be involved in the invasion until it actually came about. We were sent to with a small convoy out of Poole, England, where we met up with the LSTs, LCVPs, and we were given the instructions, stay out of the way of them. All you're going to do is be beside them going in a convoy, going to the invasion project, which was Normandy. But we stayed out of the way, and on the way, we had no trouble at all until we were about, I would estimate a mile off. Then we started receiving some shells from Normandy, and we did lose one LST. We did rescue several men from that. Then we pursued on, and we were divided up 60 Coast Guard cutters to 15 to each beach. I was assigned to, our Coast Guard cutter was assigned to Omaha Beach.
Yeah, Lars, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just listening to Mr. Hamlin, having no idea. I mean, you're basically just shipped out of US over to UK, having absolutely no idea what they're gonna do. I mean, he's with the US Coast Guard, and then all of a sudden he finds himself on the front line as the D-Day is taking place with all of that's going on. Can you imagine that shock?
Oh, Lars, it was worse than that.
Yeah.
It turns out that they didn't even consider the idea of even having rescue swimmers out there until none other than FDR brought it up in an 11th hour planning meeting. And then they looked at each other. It's like, yeah, that might be a good idea. And Jack was not trained as a rescue swimmer. Jack was just a smaller guy. So they said, we're going to tie a rope around you and throw you out there and drag you in. That was the extent of his training. And lastly, there was no proper medic or medical training or medical facilities on these Coast Guard cutters. They would just throw him on the boat, bleed him until they could bring him to an LST or a hospital ship. That blew Ryan and I away.
Yeah, and one of the things that was also amazing was that Jack didn't even know he was going to be a rescue swimmer until the day before.
Yep.
He got a rope around his waist and was thrown in.
Yeah, that's pretty much yes. I mean, it was amazing. And you're right, like what Tony was saying. I mean, they would haul these guys aboard the boat. Jack would bring them over to the boat. This other guy, Jack Turk, was a beefier dude apparently. He would reach down and grab them by their Mae West or whatever they had on, and they'd load them up onto the boat. And there was no medical. They didn't have anything for them. They just were alive. And they still had to survive on that boat until they got enough people to make it worthwhile to take a trip back out to the ships, which were how many miles offshore? Like 6 to 8 miles offshore.
Yeah, they were. It was a significant journey out there.
Yeah,
I can't remember how many miles back. I thought it was farther than that. It really kind of blew me away.
Guys, just think about this. I mean, all the landing crafts, you were basically going from a landing ship and on to the beach and then off.
Yeah.
These guys, their job was just to be around in that area in the kill zone, pretty much, and operate in there.
Yep.
And on top of that, for all of
that hits me hard right now.
Oh, dude, for all the shoestring stuff that they did, this 11th hour stuff and no real training, just throwing them in there. When Ryan and I did the statistics, they saved about as many men as were lost on their section of Omaha Beach. So it's not like they were just said, hey, just go out there and look for bodies, and they didn't have the training and they were ineffective. Even without the proper training, without the proper preparation, these guys saved The fatalities would have been doubled on their sector of the beach if they weren't there.
Wow. Just a question, guys. Do we have any, and this may not be related, but do you have any research or anything that indicates that Mr. Parker and Mr. Hamlin was anywhere close?
Well, only that Jack landed on Omaha Beach. I don't think Jack knew specifically where they were at any given time, other than I don't know if he knew what sector they were covering. I think they had, how many did they say that they had? They had like 2 or 3 boats for Omaha, or is it more? I forget how many they actually had for Omaha itself, the entire Omaha Beach,
Right. Yeah, I can't remember how many boats they had, but they had everything sectored off. They had the Omaha sector, and they called it a flotilla, and each flotilla had some number of boats, less than 6.
Yeah. And so the other thing that was interesting to us in Jack's interview that we did with him was that he never saw Omaha Beach from his boat. It was always obscured by the smoke.
And the fog and everything.
And the fog and everything else that was going on. So the entire day he was out there, which was the entire day he was out there on that boat, they never saw the beach. Even though, as I asked him, did any rounds come in and come close? And he said, no, he never got anything like that. But nonetheless, they were close enough that they were picking up survivors from landing craft that had foundered, because they were hitting mines, because artillery was hitting them, and so on. Or they would just sink,
And he learned a new skill that day, a skill that hopefully none of us ever have to learn. He learned how to be able to tell pretty much by just looking whether or not the body was dead or alive. He could tell by the way they floated in the water whether or not it's even worth going over to try to rescue them.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Stunned silence.
Yeah, we'll continue here.
With 15 cutters. And our duty was,
there you go,
we would go in with the landing barges and LSTVs. And if anybody there got into the water, our duty was go into the water, if they were drowning or they were wounded, then we would pick them up on our cutter and we would take them out to the hospital ships, which were about 10 miles offshore out of the range of the guns. We did save, I will estimate, we didn't take count, of course, but we probably saved in the vicinity of over 50 men from the water, and we did deliver them, our Coast Guard cutter alone, delivered them to the hospital ships on LST, the first one we could find, out of the range of the Normandy guns. There was one Coast Guard cutter, but number 19 was his name, Lieutenant McPhail. They saved they saved 117 soldiers out of the water. That was quite a thing, and I understood he received the Navy Cross for that, which was great for the Coast Guard.
One of the things I'll jump in and say about what he just said, you think, well, how could they have possibly rescued 117 men? Jack's Coast Guard cutter, which is the same size as the other cutter, they were able to get 50. The reason was they happened to be right by an LST, a bigger ship that got hit by artillery fire and immediately sank. And they jumped from their Coast Guard cutter over to the LST, rescued guys off of the LST, and that cutter was just loaded down with over 117 guys. They were right there when a big ship got hit. So that was the serendipity that they were right alongside that as they got hit, and they were definitely in the line of fire at that point, the 50 guys, just think about that. I mean, Jack was involved in pulling 50 guys out of the water that day. So, I mean, he's a real hero, and all those guys with every job that they did were all heroes over there. So,
just imagine for every 50, the gotta be a high percentage that didn't make it. That horrible to say, but that wasn't worth it. That had to leave.
Yeah.
No, Lars, you're right. They say the real history of any event is actually in the cemetery. Are the people we're never able to talk to, because those can often be far more numerous, and those are the ones that saw the impact of what happened there. But I I think it's amazing that these little boats were able to cram that many people on there, bring them to the hospital ship, come back out for another sortie or whatever they want to call it. And also we significantly underestimated the number of ships that were out there. Right when Eclipse started, he told us the flotilla had 15 ships, 15 boats.
And 10 miles to go after the ship.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Now, as I say, as my duty was to put a rope around me, I would jump into the water. As far as I could go was about 30 or 35 yards away from my cutter. And I would be rescuing the boys that were either wounded or they were drowning in the water. I would bring them back to my Coast Guard cutter. Then the larger boys, which were on board, they would pull them up with a chain or a rope and pull them aboard our cutter until we had enough that we would take them up to the hospital ships, which were 10 miles offshore, as I told you. Again, naturally, we wouldn't count exactly how many we were saving, but we did save probably right at 50 soldiers out of the water on one trip. We went back for the second trip, but there was no more bodies to be picked up. We were told not to pick up any dead ones, only the wounded or the drowning. That was our duty.
Was there any reason they told you not to get the dead ones, Jack?
Yes, they didn't need the dead ones. They couldn't have any place to put them in for one reason. They said, just leave the dead ones, they'll pick them up later, or they'll float into shore. They said, no, we don't have room enough. And we didn't have room on our little cutters to put more than 20 bodies. So I'm sure that we did fill up on our one trip.
So you could probably point to, I was just doing some math. I mean, if you save 50 people, there's got to be at least, I don't know, 200 or 300 people walking around today on this earth because of you and what you did that day.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I've been told that several times, and it is true. There were so many of them that we couldn't get, as you know, but we were very late to get by. And we did, the Coast Guard cutters saved 1,018 people we did save on D-Day from the rescue. Now, when I say D-Day, it was also 2 or 3 days, but we did save the entire 60 Coast Guard cutters. We saved over 1,000 lives that returned back.
You know, that's not bad for a guy who didn't think he was going overseas in the first place. I saw an interview where after you joined up and they rejected you with the Marines and the Naval Air, that you joined the Coast Guard and thought, well, you'll just do your service stateside, right?
That's exactly what it was. Not that I was scared, but I said, well, they tell me you're not going to go anywhere to combat, Jack. You're going to be right on the shores. You got enough to do trying to find the submarines. Well, that really delighted me. I'm not that big a hero, and I wasn't a hero. But it ended up, I just can't tell you. We had a crew of 13 men. Every man on our boat is a hero to me because they all participated, even though we only had 2 swimmers. We had so much to do. And then also on Christmas Eve,
all right, he's getting ready to get into Leopoldville. I just wanted to jump in real quick. I was waiting for a good spot. Remember, Jack's got an enlarged heart. Okay, he had the rheumatic fever, enlarged heart. That kept him from seeing frontline service, he thought. And then look what happens. They put him on a Coast Guard cutter, literally right off the beach from Omaha Beach, one of the bloodiest invasion beaches in our nation's history. And they're having him jump into the water, 45-degree water with an enlarged heart, swimming over there fully clothed, grabbing guys and swimming them back over to the cutter to be lifted out of the water. And, and he did that. He also did that, as you'll hear, on the frigid waters off of Cherbourg on Christmas Eve. I mean, That's just amazing to me. Tony and I marveled at that whenever we did his series, and these guys are just a different breed.
Yes, so much for not being able to handle the rigors of combat, right?
The physical strain of that must have been far more than, combat in that sense.
Oh, I can't.
Swimming in freezing water like that is just,
I can't tread water for 5 minutes, right, without feeling like I'm going to die. So yeah, think about what this guy jumped into water to pull out over 50 people over the course of an entire day and then some. Unbelievable. But there's a number of stories like that as you got towards, especially earlier in the war, 42, 43, the United States military was more selective physically with various conditions than they were as they got towards the end of the war. We needed more replacements. And there are no shortage of stories of these people who were 4F'd or rejected physically early in the war, who got drafted in 44 and went on to do these amazingly rigorous and heroic things. So, you just can't tell by looking at someone or an EKG what they're going to do when they get in combat. And I think the military learned that after seeing these men who were 4F'd go into the service and just kick ass and take names.
So I'm a numbers guy, and while he was talking, and this is so amazing to go through this again, because like you say, you miss so much. But so 50 guys, and you reckon there are 2 swimmers. So if I, just by numbers, if I say Jack saved half of them, that's 25. He said he was doing about 35 meters. So you multiply that out, 25 by 35. That's almost a kilometer one way. I don't know if he had to swim back or they pulled him out.
Wow.
So that's 1 kilometer of swimming, right? In
the waters of
freezing
Omaha Beach,
fully clothed with shoes. Now I'm a swimmer. I'm a guy. I swam this morning, and my workout is, well, I'm a little older than Jack would have been at the time, but still I swim about 600 meters every day. And that's at my own pace, at my own leisure. Nobody's trying to kill me. So yeah. Right. So I mean, it's just, the deeper you go into this, it just gets more and more insane. Right. Yeah.
I wonder if you could tell a kid in the US Navy in 2024 to go do that, what they would say to you. If with no training, no explanation of why we're doing this, not having a clue what you do, if you're just like, so what's the plan, Captain? Well, here's a rope, get your ass in the water. I wonder how that would go over today relative to the way it went over with these kids from the Great Depression.
HR would be on it like bees on honey.
You're probably right.
and I mean, as we sit in our digest what we're hearing, which is kind of amazing. I mean, it's just these Coast Guards swimmers, rescue swimmers, or Coast Guard in general is receiving far less recognition than they deserve in the whole war, in my opinion.
Agreed.
No doubt.
And I draw my mind immediately to Douglas Monroe. Not sure whether you know who he is. He was a Coast Guard member. He was actually awarded, I believe, the Medal of Honor posthumously after being killed on the 27th of September 1942 off Guadalcanal when he piloted his Higgins boat in between a landing craft that was just basically extracting Marines from mainland Guadalcanal. So he got himself in between with his Higgins boat from the Japanese that was firing upon the landing craft from the shore, and he sustained some wounds from that, of which he died. And I think the rescue swimmers motto of the Coast Guard is so others may live.
Yeah.
And just keep that ringing in your head as we continue to listen.
Yeah, I agree. Good point, man. And you're right. There are so many. When we were doing research for this, there was a whole bunch of photos of Marines. You got to mean the Marines are a branch of the U.S. Navy, and they don't really like the Navy. They think the Navy is a bunch of sissies. And there were a bunch of Marines on various islands holding up big signs thanking the Coast Guard, showing their appreciation for the bravery that the Coast Guard showed, bringing them on the beach, doing everything they can to give them cover so they could get on the beach relatively unmolested. It was, I couldn't agree more. Did not know about any of this stuff until we met Jack and started doing this research. And it makes you wonder how much more of this is out there that we still don't understand or appreciate.
Real quick before we jump back in, can you guys see the video also?
Yeah.
You can. Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that everything's working for you guys and you aren't just hearing his audio. So, okay, back we go.
For this story, you know, on Christmas Eve, we rescued when the Leopoldville was sunk on Christmas Eve of 1944. We were involved there also.
Right. And that is the hook that brought the two of you gentlemen together here today. Because when I realized that the Leopoldville had been sunk by this U-boat 486, which was the same
Yes.
U-boat that sank Mr. Murphy's ship, the Affleck and the Capel, which was the one that Mr. Murphy was on. So that's the question that I was dying to ask you, Jack, was
Yes, sir.
you know, so, and I know, I mean, I was reading a little bit about the Leopoldville sinking, and that was so traumatic. Apparently, it remains the largest loss of an American infantry from torpedo action from one ship because so many men drowned. I think 763 American soldiers died.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And it was so bad that apparently the authorities didn't even want to tell the families exactly what happened to their loved ones and just told them first that they were missing in action and later on that they were killed in action. But because the sinking was, I gather the whole rescue operation and the way it was all coordinated left a lot to be desired, and so these men died. But you were involved in that, and I know that that's also maybe a little bit difficult to speak about. I don't know if you want to share anything from that you wanted to share with us.
It's the only. There was one that I'll never forget. As I say, I had a rope tied around me, and I could only go about 30 yards. And there was quite a current there in the channel when it went down. The ship went down, and I could hear one little voice yelling, "Help me, help me, help me." Well, the current there was running about 13 miles an hour, and he kept drifting away from me. I couldn't get to him because I only had about 30 yards of line. And to this day, I'll never forget that I couldn't reach that one boy to save. And that stayed with me today. But I did pull about probably 15 out of the water that night. Yes, sir.
So yeah, like I said, not all wounds are visible. So you've carried that your whole life, and
Yes, sir, I have.
Tony.
This is what's powerful about doing this using video. All of us have a podcast. It's audio only. It was really fascinating to see him close his eyes and talk about that moment. We all of us on the phone could probably close our eyes and think about a moment of our life that we can see being played back in our head like a video recorder, maybe the birth of one of our kids, maybe something traumatic that happened to us. And you just saw on video that happen to a 120-year-old man.
102.
102. I'm sorry. Geez, 120. He's Japanese. To 100, to a 102-year-old man who was going back to that. And I'll add one more thing. We said this when we did the podcast as well. Oftentimes when we have nightmares or dreams generally, they're about something just out of reach. We can't run fast enough. We can't, we were a day late for something. There's a frustration in our dreams or our nightmares that cause us to call them nightmares because of that helplessness we feel. Well, imagine having something in your life that's as bad or worse than any nightmare your brain conjured up, except it actually happened. And then you remember that in your nightmares, in your dreams. It's like PTSD squared. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for him.
I mean, you saw how fast he went there. I mean, he was back in the waters out of
It's still
Cherbourg
real.
in an instant there when he was asked, and you could see it reaching for that guy. And I bet that's not the first time he's been there either in the 70, 80 years since.
Yeah.
Totally. And can I just add a few more things about the Leopoldville
Sure.
before we roll on? Because I'm not sure how much he's going to talk about it. But that was such a tragedy. It was an old Belgian luxury liner. It only went about 15 knots. It was converted to a troop transport in New York City, and we were moving around 2,200 troops across the channel that night. That's a sizable piece of cargo. And when the U-486 shot 2 torpedoes into it, the first one hit 3 portions of the hull that killed about 300 men instantaneously. Now, because it was a Belgium liner or troop ship, the captain and the crew didn't speak English. And they didn't order an abandoned ship. And a lot of the men on the ship felt like they were being told that, hey, no, we're not going to sink. We're fine. We're going to get a tug. They're going to pull us onto shore. Who wants to jump in the water on December of 1944 unless you absolutely are told to? And so that's what made it so bad. The ship sank relatively slowly, and it was made worse by the fact that because it was Christmas Eve, when they tried to communicate in Flemish, which is what they spoke, into Cherbourg, there was a bunch of ships there, a bunch of people partying, a bunch of people enjoying Christmas Eve, and it took an hour before there was even a recognition from Cherbourg that there was this ship out there full of our troops sinking. And so that's what caused the loss of life that he talks about, almost 800 men. I can't believe it's not more on a ship of 2,200 people. I can't believe they didn't lose half or more of them. And then you heard him mention, and this is also mentioned in the Freedom of Information Act, when these men were discharged, they were told, if you mention this to anyone, we will take all of your veterans' benefits away from you. And they were not allowed to talk about this because it was so embarrassing. It's not our finest hour, quite frankly. And I'm just glad that Jack, and the real hero of this story in terms of just the sheer number of people that were saved, came from a British destroyer called the HMS Brilliant, which rolled alongside of it. They dragged out their mattresses and hammocks, put them on the deck to let people jump onto the ship, which because of the swells, sometimes that jump was as high as 40 feet that these men were jumping, and many of them got injured from it. So it was, when he went out there, it was a real debacle.
So one thing I'll say, and I forgot all about the Flemish crew, Tony. I completely forgot about that part of it because we did all this research for Jack's series and everything. But so when the crew actually said, "Oh, you don't need to worry about abandoning ship. Everything's fine." Well, they jumped in the lifeboats.
They took off.
The crew took off and took the lifeboats and left everybody else there in a sinking ship without lifeboats. And so what happened when the HMS Brilliant pulled up? Those guys were trying to get away in the lifeboats, and the Brilliant came up and smashed them between the hull of the Leopoldville and the Brilliant.
It's called karma, my friends. I hate to see anyone lives. I hate to see anyone lives taken, and it's a tragic. But the bottom line is that did happen. The crew acted cowardly, got in their boats, and ended up dying. Now, the captain, interestingly enough, and some of the crew members would go down with the ship. The captain would not survive. He would die. But members of the crew that came out of the Belgium and Belgium Congo and those areas, they're like, "Oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine." They got in their boats and left, and then they would end up dying because of their act of, I'll call it cowardice. I don't know. Maybe that's too strong of a word. Fear, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Brave of the destroyer, though, as well, to pull up alongside a sinking ship that's just been torpedoed.
You know, guys, one of the things that I have learned so far removed from these episodes is that it's better to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could well have been that way, Tony, and I don't doubt you in terms of what actually physically happened, but in terms of the mindset of the crew, and the optics are bad. I agree with you entirely, but you just never,
Well, the captain didn't speak English. Maybe he told some of his crew who weren't part of the engine room to abandon ship. Maybe they were just following orders. But I do know that there was a lot of resentment from the Americans and the families who family members died. They felt like one of the role for the crew was to help them when things like this happened to happen, and they just felt like they were abandoned.
And I completely understand that.
Then one thing I'll say is, we talk about the Leopoldville kind of being buried under the rug, by our government, up until, what was it, the mid-90s, I think?
1996.
Well, Slapton Sands was similar. I mean, I think, the exercises for D-Day that were such a debacle just a few months before the actual landings, those were hidden until the 1980s. Again, a similar sort of issue where the military just did not want that out. It's bad press. So,
and can I just give a quick shout out to the men who were on that ship? They were part of the 66th Infantry Division. There's 2 regiments that were on that ship when that happened. And I don't have that part in front of me, but it was basically, so an infantry division consists of 3 regiments. It was 2/3 of a division, the fighting strength of the division that was on that ship heading over on D-Day. So, a hat tip to the 66 ID. That's a hell of a way to get to make your way into combat for the first time.
Yeah.
Just last little thing on cover-ups, and going back to Mr. Shigeaki Mori at the beginning, the men that he saw from his school were US POWs, and that information was covered up as well. It was not released until much later on, because obviously the last thing anybody wanted to admit was that the atom bomb killed Americans in Hiroshima. So he had to go actively dig that information out. I'm not sure at what point it was released, but it was released. Which is all, a part of his journey, to determination to find these men and get their names listed.
So Nick, is this guy part of that group from Japan that are survivors from Nagasaki and Hiroshima, who have been advocates for banning nuclear weapons, who are receiving a Nobel Peace Prize right now in Sweden?
I'm not sure. I mean, well, the short part of that is, yes, he certainly is what they call a hibakusha, I think is the word. Anybody who survived the atom bomb. Whether, I'm not sure if he's actively out there. I mean, at the end of the day, I actually got an opportunity to go to Japan and meet with him and his wife. And I mean, as you can imagine, they are anti-use of nuclear weapons. Whether he's actively engaged with the group that just got this award, I'm not certain of that. I got the impression it was awarded to all of them as a group. But yeah,
the way I see it is that the Nobel Prize is awarded to that group. As if you're hibakusha, then you're basically a Nobel Prize winner in my opinion. So yes, and
the name of the group.
Know more about Shigeaki Mori, you can also tune into our podcast episode about Shigeaki Mori.
Good plug.
Totally. I love how you did that. The name of the group that's receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway on December 10th is Nihon Hidankyo, Hidankyo, Hidankyo. It's the Japanese Confederation of A and H bomb sufferers organization. So that organization, and I'm sure that the person that you had sign your book is either directly or indirectly affiliated with something like this, is they're finally getting a Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts, especially in this day and age where there's so much saber rattling and people saying stupid stuff about nuking each other. It feels like now is a good time to be reminded about how bad it is.
Yeah.
Shigeaki Mori himself could actually be. It wouldn't surprise me to see him nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize himself for what he did, and what he devoted a big part of his life to do, which is basically to make sure that these, I think it was 13 American POWs that were killed in Hiroshima, deserve the recognition instead of just sort of disappearing. I mean, he reached out and found who they were, and also found their families. And if you have any interest in how, in research, this guy doesn't know a word of English, and he's done that completely on his own from Japan. It's a complete long story, but maybe not for this episode, but would love to show you.
Well, I have one quick question before we go back to the clips. So this logbook and the people that you've had sign it has become extremely valuable in terms of the memories, the people, the figures who have interacted with it. Is it getting too valuable to mail to people? Do you have to have handlers? Do you have to have people that have to hand deliver this to people? It feels like you've turned this into an amazingly powerful talisman or artifact.
Why is Lars leaving? He's turning his back. He's like, this is a touchy subject, I think.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's how I got involved in this in the first place, because I saw this complete lunatic sending his father's logbook around the world in
That
normal
would be Nick.
post. Yeah, and he was only about, I don't know, 70 signatures in, and now we're 250 down the road. And I think, I mean, many are the stories where Nick has kept certain details about this logbook's journeys from a certain Swede, because he knows there's not enough Xanax in the world to keep him safe.
Hey, Nick, have you thought about maybe putting an air tag on it?
Actually, well, the truth of it is now, I mean, Tony, you've hit the nail. You've hit the nail more than you know. The truth of it is, yes, this book, and it is what it is. The book is so much more than my father's story now, right? And so the truth of it is, it's safely at my home in my closet right now, because exactly what you point out, Tony. If we were to lose it now, I mean, it has been nuts. The whole premise of it was completely insane and has been for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has really been a wake-up call. The book has led the way all along. I know that sounds kind of crazy, and whether you're a spiritual person or not or whatever, but I promise you, this has not. Yeah, we'd be here all day, right? But at a point, I recognize that, look, if I were to it was time to stop, and so we've agreed that any new signatures will be hand delivered and not in the mail.
That actually makes me feel really good, because I think what you've put together is amazing. There are so many times where it could have been derailed and it didn't. Ryan and I just heard something about how certain objects can impact us. When we were on a trip just a few weeks ago, they say sometimes we find things and other times things find us.
Correct.
And I think that logbook found you. It wasn't the other way around.
You're spot on. And it not only did it find me, Tony, but all 250 signatures, you guys, it's the book. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not.
It's the vessel for the whole thing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many stories within the book that we just, and I mean, I'm not going to get spiritual or philosophical or anything like that, but there's things in that book and the journey of it that just don't make sense at all. Things that we sit and say, why the hell? And then 3 days
Yeah.
later, we understand exactly why it got stuck with FedEx or wherever it was. So yeah, there's things we keep saying, just trust the book, which is I have struggled with. Nick always done it, but I guess I'm getting more and more with the concept. But yeah, I'm happy to see the book safe with Nick nowadays.
And not just the places, but the timing. And even you guys, I'm sitting here laughing because we're going over this specific story, and it involves U-boats, like I mentioned, because everything that we're talking about is tied into what I told you guys earlier. So even the timing of this call, which is about as far away from what we're engaged in right now, is so pertinent again. And I'm just laughing again because it's like, here we go again. Like, anyway, I'll stop there. Let's get back into it.
No, it's great. So now we're going to hear Jack transition into where the paths of Morel and him cross. So let's go ahead and kick it, Ryan.
Well, we are grateful. We are so grateful to you, sir. And so I wanted then to ask you, because this happened on Christmas Eve. So that must have been a very somber Christmas the next day. And then on the 26th was when U-486 struck again, and this time sinking Mr. Murphy's ship. And I wondered if was your unit involved or called out to save anybody from that event?
Sir, I'm sure we were. At the present time, I've been asked that question. I know we did get called out, but I can't remember. We only had 2 cutters stationed there at Cherbourg. Right. So just 2 Coast Guard cutters. So I'm sure we were both involved in it. But to this day, I can't remember exactly. I didn't know what the ship's name was, and somebody started to recall it to me. That's when I forgot about it.
Right. And Mr. Murphy.
Okay. So let's just go there now, okay? If there are only two cutters, let's just say Jack is 100% right. There are only two cutters. He remembers going out that night. If Mr. Murphy's correct and he was hauled up onto the deck of a boat, could it be a 50-50 chance that Jack's boat may have actually pulled Mr. Murphy out of the water?
Well,
It's a stretch. It's a stretch, I know. But they kind of line up if everyone's correct.
well, but you also
the
have
more I listen to it, the more I'm thinking that it's not even a 50-50. I mean, I'm leaning more to a very plausible thing here. I mean, there's only two cutters. Okay, there were other ships dispatched to the event of HMS Capel, but yeah.
I mean, and not only that, but there, just from the research I've done, there wasn't any other torpedo sinkings, because you can go to maps of where U-boats have sank various ships, and they've got them. You can go to a map, you can click on, and it'll tell you this. The only ones that were sunk in this area that night was the Capel, which was hit and sunk, and then the sister ship was at the Duval. I forget what it was.
The Aflac, wasn't it?
The Aflac, thank you.
Yeah.
The Aflac that was damaged and would get dragged ashore, and then
That's
it
right.
ended up being a total loss, but it didn't technically sink there.
That's right.
So that's it. I mean, there's really nowhere else that they could have sent Jack that night, based on something that got torpedoed.
The plot thickens.
I mean, it's going beyond plausible now in my book.
Yeah, ditto.
All right.
Do you remember anything about the vessels that pulled you out of the water? Is there anything that sticks in your mind from, I know you spent about 2 hours in the water, I think.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about the ship or the boat that pulled you out?
No.
No. Was it a cutter or was it American?
As far as I know, it was an American ship. An American boat, yeah.
Yeah.
I sure don't blame you there, because I don't remember myself exactly how many were there, but I do know there was only two Coast Guard cutters, and I hope we were involved in helping him to this day. It'd be wonderful if some way we could find out, that any way that he could find out there was a Coast Guard cutter, since there was only two of us there, that maybe we did save his life.
Was it a cutter that pulled you out? It was.
I think so.
He thinks so, yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah, there were just two of us, number 5 and number 23. And I don't remember exactly how many fives, so.
Wow.
But he looks marvelous and wonderful that he survived just like I did.
Well, Mr. Hamlin, whether it was you or whether it wasn't you, without you, he wouldn't be here today.
Thank you, ma'am.
So you said earlier that you're not a hero. You're a hero, an absolute hero. And don't ever let anybody take that away from you. You and everybody that served, they're absolute heroes.
Well, I'm not afraid to brag a little bit. My ego goes up quite a bit. But so
Good for you.
somebody patted
Rightly
me on the
so.
back and said, "Thank you, dear."
Rightly so.
I'd give you a little bit of a kiss if you're a bit closer. But you better not.
I still have a lot of sleepless nights thinking back over
Here we
what I
go.
went through. Why did it? Always remember when the Capel was sinking before I was lifted out of the water. Always remember it was reported that she was sank by the stern. I can tell you she wasn't sunk by the stern. She was sunk about midships. But I always remember a man standing on the stern when it was at right angles to the water. And I remember him diving between the two propellers into the water before she went down. I always remember that and often wondered, did he ever survive?
May I tell you a little story? On D-Day, as it's going across the channel to Normandy, I came alongside an LST number 50. And I knew on number 50, I had a boy that I'd played sports with back in high school. So it was dark, of course, and I pulled alongside the LST 50, the 5,000 ships going over to Normandy. And I pulled it alongside and I yelled up, "You have a Mr. Ralph Carter aboard." Somebody heard me in that night in the morning. And he said, "Yes, we do. He's our commander." I said, "Do you mind if I call him?" He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Jack Hamlin, Springfield, Missouri. We went to high school together." They brought him to the hull. And he yelled at me. He said, "Jack, what are you doing down there in that little rowboat?" I said, "Listen, you SOB, I'm going to tell you something, girl. If your destroyer is hit by a torpedo and it's down, you'll be the last SOB that I pick out of the water." But that actually happened on the way to D-Day to Normandy. And he survived also. He hit Omaha Beach. But I'll never forget telling him.
So I think I missed a question from Lars, and then Tony, it looks like you got a question too.
Yeah, Lars, did you want to go first?
Well, it's not a question. It's just recognizing, I mean, the moment where that just went by with Jennifer, expressing her thank you to Mr. Hamlin and calling him a hero. I mean, that's, I've choked up for less. I'll tell you that.
I can tell you everybody there behind Jack in that room was misty-eyed during that moment too. It was a really heartfelt for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for an Irish accent, so that made it even worse for me. So, but I mean, the thing that I just wanted to share with our audience is this ship would have had about 150, 160 men on it, and they say 67. Not quite half of them were lost when this torpedo was hit, basically amidships, almost broken in half and sunk. And then you could see the same thing happen to Morel as what happened to Jack earlier when Jack was talking about that person he's trying to rescue is just out of reach. You could see there were times where you could see Morel was kind of struggling with, certain things that he wanted to articulate or memorialize, but not that. That came back as clear as it would for us thinking about something that just happened a few minutes ago, where he talks about being blown off the ship. And it's weird. They do a lot of studies on stress on the human brain and how you can get tunnel vision. And he focused on this one sailor of his that he didn't know who it was, that was on the stern of the ship as it was going down and jumped in between the two propellers. So they say, Ryan and I, in our recent trip to Europe, we met with a psychologist there who helps with police officers who have PTSD. And she said that PTSD is caused by a sense of lack of control and lack of feeling safe. And that when you are immersed in an environment where none of those things are available to you and they don't look like they can be traumatic. It can be anything. And that for him was very traumatic. And I think as this clip rolls on, they're going to go back to this. They're going to try to have a conversation about it. But this is the first time that you heard Morel share with us, and you can see it in the video, him going back to that time that clearly affected him for the rest of his life.
Yes, and it's so interesting going back through this because we were pivoting. We were going from these deep, dark moments to, this funny story that Jack just shared. And emotional. I remember being exhausted after this session.
Right.
And, yeah, you guys are bringing me. I'm having my own little PTSD.
Yeah, it's like riding a bucking bull, because you're trying to think of the next question. You want to make sure it's a good question and not a stupid question. And or did he already answer that question and I didn't hear it because I was thinking of the next question. And that's always my biggest fear, is to ask a question the guy just finished answering right before it. Because I'm thinking of the next question. So
that's your trauma. That's what you dream about.
That is. It's some people dream about waking up at the end of the semester and you realize you haven't gone to this one class since the first week and you forgot all about it, Yeah.
I've had that.
Yeah. We've all had that stuff.
You guys, you've done hundreds of interviews with veterans. You of all will know exactly what's going on in their heads. You can see the signs, you can read them like a book. So you know exactly what's happening here, and that's, yeah.
And I think what you're going to see or hear or both as we play more of these clips, my interpretation of it, you're going to see Jack and Morel. They're gonna go there. They're going to touch it a little bit, and then they're going to back away from this traumatic event. Either someone pulls them out of it, someone makes a joke, or the granddaughter does something, and then you're going to see them go back to it again, and then they pull themselves away. You're going to see that coming up.
I also think there could also be an element of this isn't the right place.
Yes.
Because there's too many people watching. You know, you've got students watching, you've got a room full of people behind Jack, you've got people online and everything. And, you know, we tried, I tried a few times to see if we could set up a personal Zoom just between Mr. Murphy and Mr. Hamlin so they could talk privately, you know, and I even considered donating some equipment to Jack so that he could talk at his leisure. But I think it was just going to be too much trouble and to get it to work and have Jack be able to use it when he wanted to and stuff. I was the only person who could actually get everything working that day there and stuff. So it would have been probably a moot point in the end. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you, Tony. You could tell they wanted to talk about it, but they would get close to it and they were like,
and they would detach for a whole variety of reasons, including what you just said. I don't think it was the right time or place, but if we could have gotten them together, I have a feeling that they could have went to a place that may have been helpful for both of them. Because what we've learned about these veterans or anyone who has traumatic events in their lives is if you find someone you feel safe around and you can talk to that person about it, maybe it's a fellow vet, maybe it's a complete stranger, that it helps them.
yeah.
He called my little boat rowboat. It was small compared to what he was on.
Got the
Great
remote.
friend. Thank you.
It's really wonderful to talk to you and hear your story.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, indeed.
You got a beautiful smile. You keep that.
Do you have any sleepless nights when you think
Yes,
back?
sir.
Here you
I
go.
have my doctor here with me. He always takes care of me. We travel also. He's been back to Normandy with me 3 times. My personal doctor is retired, and he's a great traveler. He's a great man. He takes over when we get to France. I'll just let him have all the glory. I'll just listen.
Are you going back for
You
the
have any
80?
questions, please? Fine,
Pardon?
thank you. No, I just said, did you have any questions, hon?
Do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Thank you.
Wonderful
It's
to
been a
talk
wonderful
to you.
meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you indeed.
Yeah. So,
Keep on living, young man. Just keep on living.
and you.
And you.
When's 102? When were you 102?
I'll be October the 15th, and I don't need any presents. That's awful nice of you. I'll be 103 yet. Be 103 October the
October?
15th.
Whoa.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go. October is his birthday.
And
October is his birthday.
October, dear.
Uh-huh.
Just passed.
Just passed.
If you're in Missouri, you just come on and stop by anytime.
Put the kettle on.
I'll find a place for him. I'll find you. I started to say I'll find you a lady friend, but better be careful on that. You take care of him, young lady, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's
It's a
wonderful.
pleasure.
You both are
Pleasure
great.
to talk to you.
Wow.
So I see Ryan has typed in a question. What kind of ship was the HMS Capel, Mr. Murphy?
Capel.
Well, she was really a submarine hunter,
Destroyer.
specifically for hunting submarines. And the submarine that sunk the Capel had special tiles on the casing, which made it difficult for an echo from the Aztec asked the apparatus to send any reply back. And she had a snorkel device, which was she could stay below the water for quite a while without coming up for air.
Tony.
So just really quick, this is one of these things that I was talking about earlier, Nick and Lars. I haven't heard or seen this until today, other than when I sat in while it was being recorded. I had completely forgotten that he said that about those tiles. I thought that that thing I shared earlier was something that was not discussed in this interview. And there he is talking about it, which goes back to something Ryan said earlier. It's like, do you think he felt, some sort of remorse, regret, some sort of anxiety about the fact that, he was on the ASDEC system when this thing got sunk? You have to think that he probably took some time after the war to try to understand this a little better and probably learned that himself.
Listen, no, that's huge, Tony.
Yeah.
First of all, oh my gosh, this is unpacking. The wheel is spinning in my head. I'm sorry, but no, we have to stop here. This is really heavy. First of all, that kind of information would have been itself either not lost, but just not available if it wasn't outright classified, and probably classified just because of the high-tech stuff that was going in the arms race and all the rest of it. So and Mr. Morel, even if you compare the two of them, Jack versus Mr. Morel, they are clearly operating on different, I want to say, speeds. All right. Cognitively, they're both there, but Jack, Henry is obviously a lot slower. But the fact that he knows this, that he's raised it, that he studied it, let me tell you, this is a huge moment for me that I completely missed. I'm so pleased that you raised it, Tony, and for him to articulate that there, I am blown away.
I was just as blown away as you were, Nick, when he started saying, it's like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't, I didn't share something new. He already said this.
Well, had you not raised it, Tony, this would have been past me as well. Had you not raised it in the beginning.
Oh man, this is awesome.
Wow.
It's just awesome to hear we're listening to this again, right? I thought it was amazing when we did the interview, but when you unpack these again and really have a chance to just listen to them, you get all this additional insights to it. So
the fact that sorry, go ahead and finish, Tony. I didn't mean to jump in.
The bottom line is it to me, I feel like Morel at some point in his life was able to learn about something that probably was classified from quite some time. It was important for him to know this. He looked back on this.
That's essentially what I was going to say. I would say that he looked back on this and researched it out of the PTSD he was feeling. I think that motivated him to figure out what the hell happened here. I'm on a ship that's supposed to be detecting these damn things. Why could we not find this damn thing? Oh, it had a snorkel system that allowed it to stay down far longer than we thought possible. And second of all, it had this absorption panels on it that made it very difficult to see. So, and then was his PTSD related to the one guy standing on top of the stern at 90 degrees to the water, he said? And as it started to go down, he jumped between the propellers and he never knew if the guy survived. Was that his PTSD? I don't know. He tried to ask Jack. You heard him do it. You heard him do it. Yeah. Hey, he's like, I have trouble sleeping. Do you have trouble sleeping? And then somebody cracked a joke
and Jack deflected it. He goes, oh, I got a doctor that helps me with that. But that's not what Morel was talking about. He wasn't talking about, hey, are you old, having problems sleeping? He was asking him, are you having nightmares? Can you sleep because of this? And I know that Jack probably knew that because he talked about having nightmares on it. And that was another one of those little ping pong deflection things where it's like, one side tried to engage and the other one kind of backed away. And earlier it was Jack trying to engage and the other guy backed away. We saw that several times in this interview.
Yeah. Not the time, not the place today.
Yep.
Yeah. And then Lars, I see in your chat, you mentioned something about when Jack signed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just Jack Hamlin's birthday was the 15th of October, right? Or November, October. Anyway,
October.
He signed on his birthday. He signed the logbook on his birthday.
No kidding. That's pretty wild. Man, I mean, the timing of a number of these the numismatics on this is pretty interesting, you know? Yeah. All right. Well,
And I'm not surprised one bit.
Yeah.
No.
So we're about 35 minutes in, and I sound like we probably got from here at this point out is probably questions being asked. So we'll continue on from here. So everybody okay on time?
Yeah.
All right. Good deal.
Wow.
Wonderful.
And
You were never supposed to be on the Capel in the first place. Sure, you weren't.
No, there was a man took sick, and I was drafted in his place. So there we are.
And then what a shock and a relief that your parents must have had when you showed up, because they didn't expect you, right?
Oh, well, they were delighted and no doubt to see me again, you know. My trouble really started when I went back to go on duty. I didn't feel well, and I went to the doctor, and he told me to get out of here. There's nothing wrong with you. And at that time, after that, I suffered from loss of memory and went to a naval hospital in Dundee in Scotland. I was there for quite a while.
So were you able to resume service before the end of the war?
Pardon?
Did you go back into service?
Yes, I did. Although I didn't go back to sea. I went to an anti-aircraft range down in a place called Sheerness in Kent, and I was quartermaster there, and finished my naval career there.
You know, I was, because you spent more than 2 hours in the water when the ship went down, right? Did I have that right?
What is it?
You spent more than 2 hours in the water when your ship went down.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this was December the 26th, so the water must have been freezing. How did you survive and not die of hypothermia? How, you know, must have been
I do not know. It was just seemed to be willpower that kept me alive.
That is amazing. You know, I couldn't imagine.
But
What was your rank when you retired?
Wow.
What was your rank when you retired?
Pardon?
What was your rank when you left?
I was just an able seaman. I wasn't interested in promotion.
So does anybody else have any questions for either Mr. Hamlin or Mr. Murphy?
Hey, Nick,
I
this
do.
is
This is-
Ryan. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to throw up here real quick. This is a picture of the Capel right here,
Right.
that I'm holding up. So
Yes,
it's
I
a
have that at home.
captain class frigate, it says.
Yeah.
I was down right about here on the port quarter.
On the fourth floor.
So what was your role on the ship, Morel? What sort of duties did you do on that frigate?
Pardon?
What was your role? What did you do on the Capel? What was your
I
job?
did very little seamanship. It was more or less submarine detection.
Did you guys ever have a chance to detect a submarine and attack it or move it out of the area? Were you guys successful in that regard?
Well, you see, on Christmas night, there was a terrible lot of activity in the channel. Dropping depth charges and one thing and another, and they thought the ship was, the submarine was still there, but apparently the submarine had gone into the bay in Cherbourg for the night and started his activities the next day, Boxing Day.
Was the ship hit during the day or during the night?
Was the ship hit during the day or during the night?
Oh, it was during the day, just after midday. It happened.
Did you ever see a German submarine, or did you see the one that torpedoed you guys?
The one that torpedoed my ship went up the Irish Sea north and was sunk with all members of crew on board. No survivors at all.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions. It's just, as an American, I don't get a chance to interface or to talk much to a Royal Navy sailor during the war. How did you end up joining the military? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I volunteered. There was no conscription in Northern Ireland. So my brother had joined the army and I decided to join the Navy.
Sorry, Lars.
Yeah, I just want to. So I'm just realizing that Mr. Murphy was now referring to Christmas night as being very active on Christmas night with depth charges and submarine hunting. Did we not just talk about the Leopoldville
Yeah.
Christmas night?
Well, I think December 24th was when the Leopoldville was sunk, and then the next day, the Capel and the Affleck came to search for the sub. They were dropping depth charges, and I think they got hit, and then they sunk on the 26th, like in the wee hours. Is that right?
Yeah, no, what I mean is that he appeared to have been in part of the chase for whatever sub that sunk the Leopoldville, which would have put him in the HMS Capel smack bang in the middle of the events.
No,
which
absolutely,
then,
Lars. What sounds like what happened, and you're correct, is this horrible tragedy happened to the United States troop transport, which are some of the most highly prized, highly valued targets anywhere, right? You got all these well-trained men about ready to land on the beach to go be reinforcements. There's no doubt in my mind that the Royal Navy and the United States Navy threw an absolute shit fit over that and probably asked as many of the anti-submarine assets that we had in that area to get after it. And it sounds like he was a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, good catch. I didn't make that connection either.
And unfortunately, that German sub took 2 more ships with it. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, not that it survived that encounter and got away, obviously. But I
had forgotten during the video about this Q&A portion. This is really cool, man. I can't wait to hear what else we asked, because I'd forgotten.
What else you asked?
I had so many questions. It got to the point, I'll tell the audience this right now. It got to the point and I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. I got to the point where it's like, you know what? I'm not going to ask any more questions. I'm going to reach out to Ryan and just see if we can interview this guy individually.
Yeah.
And then we were never able to do it. And I won't make that mistake again.
All right, back into it.
Did your brother survive the war?
Oh yes, he did. He did, but he was older than I, and I lost contact with him quite a few years ago, and I take it for granted he is passed on.
So Jack, tell me the story about the day after D-Day and the Messerschmitt.
He's talking to Jack.
Telling about the Messerschmitt that you shot down.
I can tell you a little story. After D-Day, there was two German planes flying over, the beaches, and the gunner's mate was in the water doing what I was doing, rescuing who was in the water, and the airplane flew over. They told me, Jack, you fired that machine gun, the 20 millimeter. You fired it and practiced when you were back in the States. Get over there and help them shoot that German plane down. Well, young lady and sir, it's hard to remember, but I remember getting on that 20 millimeter. I'd only shot it 2 or 3 times back in the States when we were out practicing. But all the boys said this Messerschmitt was flying over the beach, that I did shoot the Messerschmitt down. There was other bullets going at it from the shoreline, but the boys said they saw my tracers from the 20 millimeter, which I had only shot probably 2 or 3 times or worked on, that I got credit for shooting down the last German plane over D-Day. And there was a book written that there was no more planes on D-Day flying over, and I wrote to the author of that book and sent him my certificate where I had shot down the German plane on D-Day. So he thanked me for that. But I did shoot down the last German plane.
And it was confirmed by.
It was confirmed, absolutely.
Wow.
Wow.
I
I
wanted
was
to
proud
ask
of
you,
that.
I wanted to ask you about that, and I'm so glad that you brought it up. And
Yes, sir.
I would love, yeah, I'm gonna bug Dr. Knowlton to share a copy of your certificate because we'd love to put that on your profile.
Fine, thank you. I will do that.
Did you ever get a chance to go and inspect the plane?
No, sir, not at all. No, all we could see were, and the boys on our boat said they could see it going down over the hill that it had caught fire. So again, as I say, I take credit for it, but there's so many bullets going up at it from the shoreline, and other boats in the water were shooting at it also. But my boys all confirmed that we saw the tracer go into your, and it was, I wouldn't estimate, but my gosh, he had been no more than 700 feet above us when we across the beaches. That's awfully close.
Sorry, go ahead, Nick. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I'm good. I was just saying the certificate, it would be a cool thing for us to upload onto his profile.
So,
and I ain't forgotten about that.
So I asked Jack about that certificate. It might have been later that day because me and Jack and Dr. Knowlton went to lunch at this really awesome cafe called Cafe B29 in Springfield, and it's a World War II like military remembrance cafe. And you go in there, and they've got military memorabilia all over in there. They've got pictures of all these guys. They got all sorts of cool stuff. And Jack's a rock star there. Okay. Anyway, long story short, we talk about that, and Jack says, I think that certificate, he goes, when I moved out of my house into this apartment, I had a whole bunch of materials that for some reason didn't get moved, and I've lost that stuff. He's like, I don't think I have that anymore. So I don't think that's going to happen unless the family has since found that. And, I could reach out and see if they could send a copy and see if anyone has found that. And I know that there's maybe a newspaper article about it somewhere from back in the day.
Well, I just put it in the chat on the US Coast Guard's website. There's an article that was written by Lieutenant Commander Dennis E. Branson that describes the event where he shot down that German plane.
So it's funny you mentioned Lieutenant Commander Dennis Branson. He reached out to me just this week. Okay, these are coincidences that we're all.
Are you shitting me? Come on.
I am not kidding you at all. So Dr. Knowlton was reached out to by Dennis Branson recently, and Dr. Knowlton sent him my information, and he contacted me this week. I spoke to him yesterday on the phone. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Dude, that's crazy. I just found this website like while we were doing this broadcast. This wasn't something that we had planned at all.
And I know this is crazy. So he's wanting to write an article about this very Zoom call that happened between Jack and Mr. Murphy.
Well, I'll be.
So I told him that we're going to be recording a discussion about this Saturday. And I told him what I would do is I would make this video available to him so he could use it to help write a story for the Coast Guard Cutter Times, basically.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be cannon fodder for him whenever he actually when we get done with this. So I was going to tell you guys that after the fact, but since you brought up his name, I'm like, well, this is a great time to talk about this because yeah, I mean, it's just all crazy stuff here. There's all sorts of little coincidences happening. And I told Mr. Branson, I'm like, you're wanting this Zoom call. As a matter of fact, we're about to revisit that this Saturday with the guys who helped organize it. And we're going to do an 80th anniversary, publish of this right around the end of the year to commemorate the 80th anniversary of this event. And so anyway, we're all thinking the same. Yeah.
I was just doing a keyword search while he was talking about that. I remember thinking to myself, when we did the podcast, I don't ever remember researching that. I wonder what's out there on it. And the first thing that pops up is from the US Coast Guard's website, an article written by him that documents that event taking place. And that's so awesome that he reached out to you serendipitously, another highly improbable event. And
it's a small world. It's a small world. It's crazy.
Yeah, because I totally forgot about the certificate, and even that I had asked him to get a copy of it. So, and at this point, it's not even about the certificate. It's about reliving this story and the fact that he's going to write about it. I mean, I couldn't even ask for a better follow up. So
yeah, and it's going out to all the Coast Guard retirees, all the people.
How sweet is that?
So yeah, it's pretty cool. So all right, onward.
It'd be pretty hard to miss an airplane on a 20 millimeter when you're shooting so many bullets at it. But anyway, I still take credit for it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've talked to a lot of pilots, but I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who shot one out of the sky. So good.
Thank you, sir.
Morel, I have a quick question. So I think there was about 158 men on your frigate. Do you know how many survived?
All I know was 80 men were killed in the explosion. I don't know how many survived. I think there was about 29 or something survived. But it didn't tally with the number that was on the crew,
There's maybe some that were never recovered.
Pardon?
Maybe some that were never recovered.
Ma'am, has he ever gone back to a reunion?
That's what I was going to ask.
Sorry?
Go ahead and repeat it again, Jack.
Has he ever gone back to a reunion of any of these people?
No.
They were with him on the ship.
I usually take part in the armistice services held here in November.
Yes, sir. Have you been back to Normandy?
No, I wouldn't want
I've
to
been
go
back
back.
6 times.
Wouldn't want to go
Wow.
back.
I've been back 6 times, and I'm going back in June. Be my 7th trip back to Normandy. And I love the Normandy people. They are very, very naturally. We saved their lives, and they're a little bit different than the people in Paris. I don't mean to run them down, but they didn't favor us too much. It was the people around Normandy that we go back, and we have one hell of a good time. I'll tell you that. Excuse my language, ma'am. Excuse me.
Wonderful.
Fine. Yeah,
Mr. Murphy,
that's
can I ask
incredible
you-
that you still do that.
Thank you, dear.
I'm saying it's incredible he still travels from America to Normandy.
Mr. Murphy, I wanted to ask you a question. I'm sitting here next to Jack. So, were you wounded when your ship was hit and the ship sank? Were you wounded at all?
No, I wasn't. The clothes were blown off. Other than that, they were ripped off, But other than that, I wasn't wounded.
Do you recall how fast the ship sank?
I would say it was an American-built ship. You see, it was all welded. The bulkheads were all welded, and you could nearly see as it went down the bulkheads giving away, and ship taking another plunge, until she eventually went down.
How long did
Thank
it
you.
take roughly for her to go down?
Well, I was still in the water when she went down. I was still on the raft when she went down. And the trouble with being in the water, depth charges were going off because there wasn't time to remove the detonators. And these explosions were terrible.
Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Just really quick. He just
Yeah.
added like another panel of terror to this. So for our audience, these depth charges are just big trash cans full of high explosives, and they can be set to explode at a certain depth below the subsurface. They have a safety feature on them that when you're not engaged in anti-submarine activity, when you're not dropping depth chargers, you have the safety on them so they won't go off. Because of exactly what he's saying is if they go off accidentally in the water, if there's people in the water, it will blow them apart. And so imagine this guy, he was at his ASDEC station looking for submarines. Submarine hits, a torpedo hits the port side. He gets blown in the water. His clothes get ripped off from the violence of it. He's in this raft. He sees this guy on the stern as it's going down. And while all that's happening, depth charges are going off, blowing his friends up into the air. I mean, I don't know why I didn't remember this when we
I don't remember it either.
originally. I mean, this is a freaking horror show. No wonder why the guy can't sleep. Unbelievable. Holy crap. Sorry, I just had to start.
That's a device to take out submarines. Imagine what that does to a human body in the water.
All things bad, none of them good. And I just sat there listening to this. And I just wanted to stop tape, just to amplify this for the audience, just to know that what he just described so succinctly in his twilight years would have been something so horrible. He probably couldn't have even imagined that this would have happened.
Because I want to understand the timing. We spoke about the confusion of the messages to go out, certainly with the Leopold. Did we have a sense that it was that same sort of confusion with getting coordinated to send, Jack and the other boat out, or was that sort of more? And what I'm getting at is he's in the water for 2 hours before he gets pulled out. So how long, do we have a sense of how long it took for them to respond and get out there? I don't know.
I don't have any idea how long they were patrolling before they got hit. Is that what you're asking?
No, I think he's asking is once they got hit, how long did it take to get help out there?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
And when I did research on his frigate, they don't talk about that. In the Leopoldville, they talk about it at length about how scandalous that was.
Right.
But the guys in the water for 2 hours, that feels like a long time in a very busy part of the world in terms of all these warships running around. So that's a great question, Nick. And I did not run into anything that spoke to that.
Yeah, because certainly, like you said, Tony, the thing of the depth charges going off. I mean, that's so violent that certainly if Jack had been in the vicinity of that, he'd have probably remembered something like it. But clearly, he was not. I'm assuming.
Excellent point. Jack would have remembered depth charges going off in an 83-foot Coast Guard cutter, no doubt about that.
Right.
So yeah, all of these things were happening before obviously the rescues could get there.
Yeah.
I mean, I also wonder if these depth charges were essentially rolling off the ship and detonating in the water. Did that exacerbate the sinking?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, whole sterns have been blown off from these destroyer escorts because they didn't have the depth setting right when they're chasing submarines. Imagine what it's like when you're stationary and these things were going off. There is no
Right.
doubt that this wrinkle he spoke to that I had forgotten about significantly
Yeah.
complicated what would have happened to the men, the survive. I'd argue now, knowing what I know now, that there are probably more men who died in the water because of those depth charges going off than maybe from the torpedo.
So
Wow.
just to be clear, are we saying and he said it, but I kind of missed it. So is he saying that they didn't take the safeties off or so these things are actually exploding on the surface or just below
Yes.
the surface?
Yeah. So what he's saying, and this is how it works. If they're actively pursuing submarines, all the safety devices are pulled off, and these things are set to just go off, 20, 30, 40 meters below. It's their job to set it at whatever depth the ASDEC system tells them to send it to based on the sonar contacts.
Right.
He just said that they were working their brains off, looking at submarines, setting off depth charges, all because of Leopoldville, right? That probably caused a lot of action to occur. And because of that, they never had a chance to turn the safeties off. And the safety's on. Because the safety was not on, which would prevent it from exploding at all, as this ship was sinking, when it got 20, 30 meters below the waves, these things would have started touching off. All of them. Racks full of them.
That's insane.
Yes, it is. Whew. All right, Ryan. I don't know if I'm ready for what's next.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions for our two remarkable gentlemen? I cannot
Tony,
even
you're
begin
shameless.
to tell you how thrilling this is for me. The hair on the back of my neck has been on end for pretty much the entire conversation, listening to the two of you speak to each other. We've been trying to pull this together for a couple of months. And I have to recognize Dr. Knowlton and Ryan for pulling this off together. You guys have Ryan, you drove 3 hours, was it, to get there?
Yeah, that's all right.
Take a bow. Please do take a bow. And Dr. Knowlton, I can only see your lower half behind the microphone. You're kind of hiding there. We'd love to see your face. There you go. So thank you so much. And over in Ireland, Jennifer, I must thank you for pulling this together and being patient as we try to get things sorted out on this side. And of course, Mr. Murphy, and Mr. Hamlin, the things you guys have shared with us today. I mean, I'm just rattling on here, but I know that once I get a chance to sit back and process what has been shared here today, that maybe I'll begin to understand how amazing this was. So, and Scott, I don't know
Thank
if
you,
you have.
sir.
Oh, you're so welcome. You guys are so welcome. Thank you both. I don't know, Scott, any of your students send any questions, or Brian or anybody else?
Yes,
Scott.
actually, Nick, one of them does. I wanted to say hello to Mr. Morel and Mr. Hamlin. I'm a high school history teacher, gentlemen, in Toronto, and I invited a few of my students to come along, and Cheney had a question for Mr. Hamlin. Go ahead, Cheney.
Yes, right ahead.
Hello, sir. I'm a high school student in Toronto.
Hi there.
Hello. It was first an honor to hear your story, and I have a question about what did you do in the war after D-Day?
What did I do in the water after D-Day?
Yes, for both.
Oh, in the war.
Mr. Hamlin.
I chased the girls in France. How's that? Well, look at him laugh. He knows about those.
At least
things.
he's
Anyway,
honest.
that's about what I did.
Take it.
I enjoyed France. The people were just wonderful to us after D-Day. They really were. But there wasn't anything for us to do. I didn't serve like in the infantry and go anyplace else. I stayed right in Cherbourg, and we did just after D-Day. All we did was escort the big cargo ships and the transport ships coming in with more soldiers for the war. We just made sure they got into the port by safe, and no more submarines sunk any more boats like the Bailey Fulville.
Terrible
But I
to
had very
see.
good duty.
Terrible to see some of those ships going down.
Yes, it was, sir. And you got to think of how many lives that we lost on the ships that were not able to get off the ship and into the water. It's a shame.
Oh, yes.
But
Loss
that
of
is
life
war for us.
really nothing. What it was.
As an outsider, I just
There
wanted
we
to
are.
thank Lars and Nick and Jennifer and Ryan for doing this. I just think this is fantastic. It's a story that's really unbelievable. 80 years ago, this happened. So I'm just in awe, but I wanted to thank you all for putting this on and putting it together.
It's just incredible. So it is, and I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that the chances are probably very high that it was one of those two cutters that Mr. Hamlin served on that pulled my granddad out of the water. You know, and if Mr. Hamlin, if you hadn't have done that, or the other ship hadn't have done that, life would have taken a very different turn, and well, I probably wouldn't be here. My mum wouldn't
Thank you,
be
dear.
here.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's just incredible. And
That
Scott,
means an awful lot to me. Thank you.
thank
It's
you.
very sweet of
Thank
you.
you. No, thank you for your service. And this man here is my absolute. I get very emotional when I talk about him. He's my absolute world.
Absolutely.
We'll
Just
maybe
keep that arm around him.
Later.
Pardon?
I say we'll maybe get in contact later again.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe get in contact later again. Mm-hmm. And Scott, you said you're in Toronto. My granddad has family in Mississauga in Toronto, so he does. One of his brothers emigrated to Canada, and his niece and nephew-in-law and stuff are still there. They actually came over last year for his 100th birthday. So they did. Yes, Mr. Hamlin, it would be fantastic to talk to you again.
They said they'd like to talk to you again if you're open to it.
Anytime, be my privilege.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful to talk to you again. It's fascinating and listening to the two of you talk.
This is fantastic that we did get together so far away, and we have something now to talk to each other and look at each other in person. And I appreciate everything. Really, I do.
Lovely to talk
so
to
many
you.
people.
Yes. Yeah. If you show a picture of what you look like in the military, see if he recognizes a younger version of you.
That's what I was.
Oh, hold it right up there. That's Jack in the military back during the day.
Wow.
Oh,
Does he look familiar now?
Do you recognize him? Do you recognize him? No.
Good.
Well, you tried, Ryan.
Yeah.
I think I had a bad reputation, but it's all right. You picked the right friend.
Chasing the girls? Is that what it was?
Oh, yeah, lady. It is funny, but I go back to Normandy.
Yes.
It's so wonderful the women. It's so wonderful the women want to hug you or kiss you, and I don't mind that at all. And I tell you, I kiss them all the way down to 2 years old up to 102, and they're all wonderful, wonderful people at Normandy.
Oh, I love Jack.
That's lovely.
God bless him.
I think Nick, you have photos of my granddad. Do you have? I don't know if you have them handy. I don't have any. I never thought I don't have any handy just at the minute, but.
Well, just the one of him in which I showed earlier. Let me see if I can do this screen share again.
Yeah.
See, I'm missing Laz. Laz is my webmaster, and he had the barbecue this evening, so I'm putting out all these secrets. But because he would normally be the one to take care and have all these things queued up and ready to go.
You must have good barbecue.
Yeah, I'll say.
Do we need to stop and talk about it?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I do have, let me see.
You sound great, Ryan.
This one. You guys see that?
Yeah. And I
got-
have, where do I see if I can find some more?
So that's
You know, it's a funny thing.
Both
I look
there.
at that. Henry and his beard. I tried to grow a beard all the time, but I couldn't even get a whisker. I couldn't. I tried so bad to get a beard. But the hair just wouldn't come on my face until then.
Well, it doesn't seem to have slowed you down there, Jack.
I hope it doesn't.
You were more streamlined.
Wow.
Um,
Hey, Jack, can I ask you to do one thing for me if you're going to go back to Normandy this year?
Yes, sir.
Would you and Dr. Hamlin there just take up a little bit of sand, just a little tiny bit, and maybe mail that down to me?
I'd
That
be
would be
glad.
very
You
good. From the
can-
beach.
I get your address, but here's what I can do. I have some Omaha Beach sand in my apartment right now that I brought a big sack back with me.
we have
and I give it out
some
to
as
the-
well.
Here is
You
We
do
have
have
some as
sand also. But
Oh,
I'll
wow.
send
Yeah.
some to you. I promise you.
We'll get you some.
Yes, sir.
I'll
I've
get
got a
Dr.
bag
Logan.
full of it right here for you.
Thank
We
you so
actually have
much.
some as well. You know,
That
do you
would be
remember?
good.
Do you remember Nick that Scott he brought Papa some back as well? Mm-hmm.
Good for
Right,
him.
yes, of course, of course. Okay, okay.
Here's a photo here. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that.
Yep.
I don't know if you
Just hold it up a little higher. There you go.
there's
That's
one.
lovely.
And I think I have. There's one there.
Good picture. Fine.
You see him? That's him there.
There's no beard on that one.
Yeah, you're a young
No.
boy.
And there's one more.
Well, you haven't changed a bit. Look the same.
Says you haven't changed a bit.
No, but it's terrible what you went through in your young days when I was 21 years of age at that time, which seemed terrible. But there we are.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Go ahead, Tony.
Just a couple observations. There, he went there again. This is,
Yep.
I think, the fourth or fifth time during the interview where he started talking about his past and some of the issues he had. The other thing is he looked like a real badass with that beard. I'm here to tell you that dude looked like.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I don't know. He was stationed in England. If he was stationed in France, I think he and Jack would have probably had a really good time together.
Well, I think he said he was married.
Oh well, I won't. No comment.
Because I think he said that when he was rescued, he went back to Ireland and he spent 2 weeks with his new wife.
I'm just saying they would have had a good time together. Not saying how. Just saying they would have.
Just drinking, maybe throwing the baseball around, you know.
And another thing that happened, I
Recite
think I
poetry.
heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have a dog?
Not there. I don't know whose dog was barking.
Okay.
in
What
the
I
recording.
thought I heard was someone in Ireland's dog was barking, and then someone else's dog that was not in Ireland heard the
Oh.
Ireland dog barking, was barking
Barking
back at the dog in Ireland. I thought maybe it was your dog.
No. I don't know where the dog was. In fact,
All right.
so that's on the original recording, is it? Because I was even starting
Yeah.
to wonder if one of you guys had a dog today.
No.
I was like, where is that? I don't even remember the dog. Gosh,
Yeah,
I'm losing
I
it
thought it was
now.
funny that you could have like internet dog barking at each other from across an ocean. So, but anyway, I just wanted to stop just to mention that really quickly, for the audience that he brought it back,
He
to
did.
that moment again. This is that ping pong that happened. You could see his granddaughter was a little uncomfortable with it. You could tell she's like, well, maybe granddad, we're wrapping this up. Now's not a good time to talk about it, but there it is.
Well, but I liked how they made the comment, maybe we can get you guys together again to talk.
He
And-
really wanted to.
That really, man, we should have definitely pulled out the stops and made that happen. I mean, but I think I got her email address from you, and I tried emailing her a few times, and I never heard a thing back.
Yeah, she's not always, sometimes she's busy and you just kind of have to ebb and flow. But you know what, guys, I don't beat up on any of this because I promise you what though, this even though there was that expression, I know a lot of this was very cathartic for both of them.
Yeah.
And it brought a lot of healing,
Yeah,
even though we may not necessarily be there to witness that, but I promise you it did.
I think you're right, Nick.
I know
I
it
agree.
did.
I agree.
Okay, well, we've got, it looks like about 4 minutes left. Let's just see what else we dig out of this, and then I can edit it out later if there's not much else here. So here we go.
Well, does any other questions? Anything from the students? Anything from you, Scott? That was a great question, by the way, from Shenli. That was a great question. So any more? Anything else? Gosh, well, again, let me say how grateful I am to everybody here today. Thank you for what you've shared with us. And I do hope that the two gentlemen will be able to exchange again and speak again. That would be lovely.
Yes,
Yes,
indeed.
I'll
Thank
say on
you
my
very
part, it
much.
was wonderful.
Was.
Really, really
Wow.
wonderful. Yes.
It was amazing. And we have the recording, so we will share that with all of you in due course. And to all of those who follow us as well online, I know Ryan's podcast. Ryan has a podcast called The Warrior Next Door, where he interviews veterans from all over the US. And we've done a few things with Ryan. And it was through Ryan that we met Mr. Hamlin. So, and again, Ryan, you've been the hero for today for sure, with all you've done to pull this off. And of course, to Mr. Murphy, sir, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing what is obviously been very difficult for you.
So
But
nice to talk to you.
same here, sir.
Nice to talk to you. Okay.
All right. Well, any parting words from you, Mr. Hamlin?
Everything is fine. Excuse me. I really appreciate what you're doing. And to me, this is not an honor, it's a pleasure to be with you. And to think here, I'm talking to Ireland with another survivor. Thank God that we're here, and I wish the rest of them were with us. But let's keep living, enjoying life, and keep our memories. You got a good memory, just like I have. I remember everything, and it's good for both of us to remember what we did, what we had, what others did. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to
Keep
talk
your good
to you.
health.
Right. Goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you, dear.
Yes.
Bye. Take care.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Cheerio,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. Wow. I mean, I'm amazed at how much we all pulled out of this second analysis where we can actually devote our full brains to listening to what they're saying and everything. A lot of new ground, or maybe relearned ground. Maybe we came away realizing it back then, but we really didn't process everything. It's like you were saying earlier, Nick, you really need time to process this stuff, to put these little links together and go, oh, and man, we've had several epiphanies during this show.
You gotta sit yourself as a viewer instead of a moderator in these things, and actually look at what's going on, and that, as you said, process what was actually being said. So this was a great opportunity to do that.
One of the things that that Tony and I, when Tony and I started interviewing veterans 20 plus years ago, we started off doing the interviews together. And then we kind of split. We started getting a lot more interview candidates, and we split off and we're doing them on our own. But I really think the interviews go a lot better when you've got two people, because you don't have all of it riding on you to make sure the equipment's running right, that you did hit record, and that you're not thinking of the next question, because I think sometimes you can be a little like a mile wide, an inch deep with it. And if you got somebody else sitting there that's not, that can think of questions and everything, I think you can dig a lot deeper. And I think having everyone on this call on this original Zoom, everybody had a lot of really good questions, to really help tease out the information with these guys. And then we go back through it a second time with you guys here today. We pulled out even more information. So this has been really enlightening, I think, to put it mildly on my end.
Yeah.
One thing that becomes extremely evident to me is also, once you look at this is how appreciative both Mr. Murphy and Mr. Hamlin is of the opportunity to interact with each other. And I know, none of us in this room is doing it for personal glory, and we're certainly not doing it for the money. But the satisfaction to just basically to be able to give this to these two guys who's given so much for our freedoms today, it gives me immense pleasure to actually being able to be part of something that gave it that to them. So.
Yeah, what Ryan and I have come to appreciate in the 3.5 years we've had this podcast is that the real value for us, again, it's not the money. It's being able to connect with people like Jack and Morel and you guys, right? Without a podcast, we're just people sending emails saying, "Hey, this is great that you guys are doing it." But this podcast has given us a vehicle to create additional content, new content that doesn't exist, it didn't exist before we did this, that we can share with others. And there's a bunch of people out there who really enjoy and appreciate, listening to these stories and the connections of these highly improbable events. So if that's all that ever happens with the project we're working with, that's more than enough for Ryan and I. And I have a feeling you guys probably feel the same way about the Logbook Project.
Share that sentiment completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Honestly,
Ryan, thanks. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Nick.
No, I want to share and endorse everything that you guys have just said, but I feel like I need another timeout to go process what has happened here today. So many. Lars, I even forgot that you were not on the call. And
the barbecue. Whoa, wait a minute. We didn't unpack that. Why the hell did you miss this for a barbecue?
No, it wasn't a barbecue. I was being facetious.
Darn. I thought we got to go to Sweden to get some good barbecue. Sounds like,
He is Mr. Barbecue, though. He is always grilling something. There's always something on the grill over in Sweden.
No, to be truthful, I was on the call, actually. I had it on, but I was just not participating actively. I was listening into it. I was having it on loudspeaker, so I can hear it from my kitchen, from the barbecue.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
I was not participating. So, I wish I remember what I was actually having on the grill that night. But hey, I'll take a rain check and come back to you.
And listen, you guys, for Ryan and Tony, Lars is always the wingman. I never go out on these things without Lars, because Lars, even while we're talking, Lars is a person that if something new comes up and we didn't, include it, he'll go find the slide. And the next thing you know, he's throwing it up there on the screen. And it's so seamless.
Yeah.
And I forgot that, I was basically riding solo on this.
You were, yes.
Yeah. And God,
you did a bit of a job for me.
You did great, Nick.
But I had a lot of support because Tony, your questions were amazing, and Ryan, everything you did. So it was certainly not a one-man show in that sense. But I would, I'm almost kicking myself thinking, how on earth would I agree to do this without their lives? I was insane. So we did pull it off. So kudos to everybody. But
maybe I just left you last minute.
You probably set up the call. I'm sure you would have done that.
Yes, I did. Yeah. No, I did.
Yeah. But wow.
Well,
yeah.
I just want to say, for Tony and I, when we started doing this podcast, we were hoping we'd be able to collaborate with people. Mm-hmm. And you guys are a couple of guys that I'm really happy we've been able to connect with. It's all been through the matriculation of the gods and everything happening. And, where, I found Bill Parker's write-up that you guys did whenever I was doing research on Bill, and I reached out to you guys. And it's funny how all this stuff has come together and now, through Jack Hamlin, Bill Parker led to Jack Hamlin, which led to the Morel Murphy connection. It's a lot of great stuff. and there's a lot of really, like you said, these kind of cosmic moments where you're like, what the heck is going on here? Like you said, the events come to you and everything, and we're just the players, we're just the pawns in the whole matter of things. So anyway, I don't have much more to add. If you guys have anything else you want to say in closing, I'll leave it up to you. But I'm really happy we're able to get together and do this. I think we were able to add a lot more color to this whole discussion between Jack and Mr. Murphy. So anyway, anybody else have anything in closing?
Again, just to thank both you, Ryan and Tony, for pulling us along, because like I say, we are very much elsewhere, distracted right now, but it is amazing. And Laz, I don't know what you think, but it's amazing how, because I actually wanted to have a one-on-one with Mr. Hamlin just to talk about his submarine, his duties on the ship. And so, Tony, I had forgotten that you had pulled all of that out in this. I mean, this is so rich. My God.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for doing this, because it's amazing how it does tie into what's going on with us on the sidelines now. So it's awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and sign off then. I hope we can collaborate on projects again in the future. I have a feeling we will. Yep. So for Nick and Lars of the Logbook Project, and Ryan Fairfield and Tony Lupo, the Warrior Next Door,
I know what's coming.
Off. Everyone have a great day. I hope for our listeners, both our listeners, hope you guys enjoy this. And as a parting shot,
oh wait, it cut off. It cut you off.
We'll have to do a canned caca on that one.
Okay.
Everyone have a good evening.
Bye, guys.
All right. I stopped recording. There it goes. All right, we're clear.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So we're all really happy about what we just did. May I just remind you that we all have a Bill Parker interview that we could do also?
Oh, are you talking? So you
did together.
So, which one? Which we did a Bill Parker interview together?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking. Wait, you're talking. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We did. There was one that he was on the Veterans Breakfast Club, but then there was one that he did with you guys too. I forgot all about that. Well, you guys must have that. Do you guys have that video? That? I just wonder if you guys hosted it, because you would have the video of that. I completely forgot about that.
I think you probably have it too somewhere. Let me
see if I do have it.
It's on YouTube, so.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe we can do something like that after the first of the year or sometime.
Yeah.
Do we have a D-Day special in the hopper this year, Ryan?
I don't think we've discussed. We've got more we can do. We just haven't discussed which one we're going to do yet.
We could do it for the D-Day special, or we could do it for an air raid edition or whatever. How many minutes long is the content? Is the video?
On the Bill Parker?
Yeah.
It's pretty long.
That was the one we did at the Tulsa Air and Space
42?
Museum.
Oh, hour and what?
It's an hour and 42.
Woo!
But with intros and outros. It's a YouTube. I posted it on in the chat, so you can have a look.
All right.
Okay.
But, I got the original footage. I think I have it with it all divided up as well, with the different all the separate files. So happy to share that with you. I think I may have already done that. If not, I'll be happy to do it again.
Yeah, I'll go dig around. I probably have it squirreled away somewhere.
Yeah, we should put this on our website, Ryan.
That's a great call. And Lars, wasn't Judy on that call?
Yeah, Judy
Yeah, that's an awesome one.
Yeah, Judy was on it, and they spoke, I believe.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I do remember that now.
Yeah.
So we were at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. We used their facilities to actually do the call with you guys.
Wow. Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But
you were the hero there again, Ryan.
Actually, that was probably his his handler, David Rule. He was the guy who brought Bill to all over the place. He did so much for Bill and everything. So, well, all very good. Guys, I don't want to keep you any more of your personal time here and stuff, but this has been a great, as always, it's a lot of fun chatting with you guys and everything. I'm glad you finally got to meet Tony. You see he's real. Yeah. He's not AI generated content or anything like that. He's like Max Headroom there on the other side.
What I love about him is that he's as data driven as I am.
I am. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. So,
all right, guys.
Are you gonna when are you gonna release, or what are you gonna?
So we can talk about this. I mean, so what I could I don't think I can get it done by Monday. I was hoping to be able to release it on our end. Now you guys can release it whenever you want. I could make the video and everything, upload it to you guys, and you could download it and do your own thing with it. Or what we were thinking of doing is our series, the American Saint Nick series we're running right now, ends basically right before the end of the year. So we're thinking of maybe dropping this as close to the anniversary as possible, but it would have to be like around maybe the 28th or the 29th, something like that. Because our next series would then start on January the 6th. So we want to try to do it as close to, I guess it'd be December 31st. We wanted to do it as close to the actual anniversary event we can, but between series, you know.
So you think about have this be a one episode, Ron, or are you going to break this up into a couple?
Well, this was over 2 hours. Yeah.
Feels like it'd probably be broken up into a couple
crap
episodes.
You're going to keep in.
We could, yeah, it's true. If I go through it and really fine tooth comb it and get rid of, a lot of the filler stuff, that'll save us some time. We could drop it as, one big long series, make it a 2 hour episode, or we could split it into two and then drop it one day and then drop the next episode the next day.
So I guess, for me, whatever suits you guys, because you set this up, you done it, however you want to release it. I mean, you mentioned us enough time in it anyway. So I for me, I'm not going to take the files and do my own thing. I'm going to completely go with whatever you guys produce, because you're putting the time and the effort into it. I'm just very honored and happy to be part of it. So.
Well, I don't want you to feel like that. I mean, if you want to be able to do anything with it, I mean, obviously this is your content too. So I just didn't want you to feel like that we were trying to hog all the, the control of it or anything like that. So.
No, I mean, I'd be happy to take the, the original file. I mean, as for the Netflix documentary in 50 years time and the series, series 4, episode 15 is going to be over this one. So
right. Of course.
If it's all the same to you, Ryan, I mean, just if you don't mind putting it out as a collaboration, Warrior Next Door, Logbook Project, and
sure,
and then we just share the same content.
Sounds great.
We did that with Ray Harris on history of World War II.
Oh, there you go.
I'm leaning more towards, I think it should be broken up into a 2-part.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree,
think
Tony.
Having someone want to sit down for 2 hours and listen to this might be, it's hard to do. A lot of people like to be able to go when they're at the gym or something. So.
Because what would be cool, this is not me, but it would be cool if you got it to the point where just before they start to really get into the meat of their encounter, and you cut it there and you say, tune into the next one. I think people would just come back in droves. So, but that might take a bit of editing, Ryan. So I don't know what your time like is from, but
sure.
I agree with Tony.
I'm planning on, I'll get this stuff edited, because there's some stuff that I could probably move from later in the call to keep it all in flowing. Yeah. And so I can do that, move some stuff around, get rid of some dead space here and there.
I can't imagine me edit it in anything different than you do. I mean, you guys are so much more further down the road than we are in terms of content creation. So I got full faith in you guys.
Okay. Sounds good. Do you guys have any trouble with me sharing this data with that Branson guy?
No, by all means.
Okay.
Urgent.
If he could throw in our website, as a reference in there, that'd be awesome.
Okay, I'll make sure that I'll send him an email with all the information, and I'll let him know to please credit Logbook Project with the website, web address, and then the Warrior Next Door also.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. It should have dual branding on all of it.
Cool. Yeah. So I think the subject is this call. He wanted to do a follow-up story on Jack, and he had heard about this Zoom call that had happened, probably through Dr. Knowlton.
Right.
And so that's how this whole thing happened about. It's so funny because he gets a hold of me. I'm like, well, as a matter of fact, we're recording a discussion on it this weekend, and because we want to publish on the 80th anniversary as close as we can. And so it's working out. Working out pretty cool.
Shows a bit also what this meant to Jack and Dr. Knowlton, in my opinion. The fact that he remembers it and actually references it at something that could be of interest for. So again, coming back to just feeling good about what we do in terms of that's just the recognition, all we need.
Yeah.
Well,
all right, guys.
You guys, I gotta jump off, and Ryan, let's connect. Let's connect earlier next week and just kind of get everything lined out. So when we come back from the holidays, we can hit the ground running.
Sounds good. I'll have some clips cut, Tony, for the Bill Mock series. And let's try to, I need to try to get that recorded with you so I can get at least the first episode ready to drop on right after the first of the year.
Let's do that. I'm available most evenings next week. I'm also going to cut up the Ray Harris thing that we dropped, and I'll have that as available for a couple of episodes for us at the start of the year as well, if we need to put it somewhere to give us some time.
Okay. Yeah, guys, Tony and I just got back from this trip to Europe. I don't know if you knew we were going over there. We went over there for the American St. Nick 80th anniversary, and we did a whole bunch of other like bulge stuff there. Got to go out on a day-long tour with Tony's friend Burton, and he's a avid historian, and he's a geophysicist like Tony and I and stuff like that. And his job over there is to do surveys and uncover unexploded ordnance. That's one of the byproducts of what happens when he's doing these surveys. But he took us all around to where all these amazing things happened during the Battle of Bulge. A lot of things you've heard of, like the Wereth 11, the 11 black soldiers who were tortured and killed by the SS. Took us to that spot. Wow. Took us to some bomb craters out in the middle of the forests that were from bombers that were bombing a nearby city and stuff. I mean, it's just, the 99th INR platoon, which was in the book, The Longest Winter. That just amazing stuff. So we're going to have a ton of content coming from all that stuff we got to do over the last 12 days. So
and I got some of it. Oh, go ahead.
When did you leave? Sorry, when did you leave?
Right around Thanksgiving here, about which would be like the 26th, 27th of November.
I know where you're going, Nick.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, they did not link up with Les in that group.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we came back. Tony came back a few days before us, but it was right around December 7th, 8th, 9th. We got back from there. But we got to go to Cologne. We went to the site of where the tank duel happened right there in Cologne. Have you ever read the book Spearhead by Adam Makos?
Yeah. Well, do you know the guy who pulled the trigger for that tank?
Smoyers, Clarence Smoyer.
Yeah, signatory.
He's on the logbook. Awesome. Yeah, you and I were talking about that. We were both trying to think of Clarence's name that day, and I'm like, Yep. So Tony and I geeked out. We stood right where the Pershing fired at the Tiger and everything, and it was just awesome. Wow. Went to the Gestapo headquarters in Cologne. Went to, all over the place and stuff. So Tony, awesome. On the way down to Bacharach, I stopped at the Remagen Bridge location and got a little video there at the Remagen Bridge. Awesome. Yeah, they never built it back after the war.
No shit.
Yeah, it's still, all the abutments are still there, but it's gone. They never built it back.
They're probably still traumatized over what happened the other time.
There we go.
Oh, Clarence Smoyer. Look at that.
There's Clarence. And Laz, can you go to Heck?
Yeah, I have to stop sharing and
that's all right. Heck, as you mentioned, Remagen, Heck is one of the last guys over the bridge.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, he's also a signatory. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's insane. It's insane. It's all
Well,
inside.
Okay, guys.
You guys got a real treasure there, and we'll hook up again. We got shit to do. We're like-minded individuals.
We do.
We got a story to tell. We'll do it together.
I like it. I really
All
like
right.
it, Tony. Thank you. And
Take
you
care,
brought
guys.
so much
All right,
out.
guys.
Thank you
Take
so
care of
much.
yourselves.
guys.
I'll be in touch, okay?
Good stuff.
All right. Thanks.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.